Chapter 68. Eh, Owner Boo, are you going to the Immortal Phoenix restaurant to eat? Xiao Xiaolong's eyes widened when he heard Bu Feng's words. His expression became a little strange. Xiao Yanyu and Ouyang Xiaoyi were also very puzzled. In their opinion, Bu Feng's culinary skills completely crushed the chefs of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Why would I want to eat at the Immortal Phoenix restaurant? As the #1 restaurant in the Imperial City, the Immortal Phoenix restaurant naturally has its own merits. Moreover, this chef also needs to learn. Only by accepting all rivers into the sea can there be a big restaurant, Bu Feng said indifferently. He turned around and walked toward the direction of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Only by accepting all rivers into the sea can there be a big restaurant. The corner of Xiao Xiaolong's mouth twitched. He suddenly felt that there was something wrong with Owner Bu today. Xiaoyi, don't you think that Owner Bu is very strange today? I feel that Owner Bu's purpose for going to the Immortal Phoenix restaurant is not pure. Xiao Xiaolong moved closer to Ouyang Xiaoyi and whispered with narrowed eyes. Ouyang Xiaoyi was a little confused and asked curiously, "Strange? No, what's strange about it? The more you learn, the more you can improve." These words are very reasonable. Grandpa often says the same thing to Xiaoyi. Xiao Xiaolong pursed his lips and thought, "All right, I'll pretend I didn't say anything." The three of them quickly followed Bu Feng's footsteps and walked toward the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Xiao Xiaolong and the others were naturally familiar with the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Before Bu Feng's store appeared, the place they went to the most was the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. After all, it was the #1 restaurant in the Imperial City. The taste of its dishes was worthy of recognition. Of course, that was under the condition that their dishes were not comparable to Bu Feng's. Owner Bu, since you're going to the Immortal Phoenix restaurant, do you understand its rules? Xiao Xiaolong took a few steps and walked side by side with Bu Feng. Rules? What rules? Bu Feng turned his head and looked at Xiao Xiaolong with a puzzled expression. The corner of Xiao Xiaolong's mouth twitched. He knew that Owner Bu must have decided to go to the Immortal Phoenix restaurant on a whim. However, even though he was speechless, he still gave Bu Feng some knowledge. As the #1 restaurant in the Imperial City of the Light Wind Empire, the Immortal Phoenix restaurant has a total of 3 floors. The decorations and quality of service on each floor are different. The first floor is the general area. The dishes on the first floor are not expensive. Those with slightly better family can go there a few times a month. The second floor is the VIP area. The Immortal Phoenix restaurant has put in a lot of effort to decorate it. The waiters on the first floor have also been replaced by pretty maids wearing embroidered robes. In terms of service quality, it is already superior to the entire Imperial City and even the entire empire. Furthermore, the dishes on the second floor are much more expensive than the first floor, and the taste is also much better. The third floor is the sovereign area. All of the services here are of the highest quality. Whether it's the decorations or the service staff, they are undoubtedly the best in the Light Wind Empire. Furthermore, only those with high status can enter. Xiao Xiaolong explained to Bu Feng. He introduced the different marketing methods of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's third floor. After Bu Feng heard this, he narrowed his eyes and nodded. The owner of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant still had some brains. The different levels of marketing could make people feel the difference in status and promote consumption. The customers in the general area would go to the VIP area because of their reputation, and the customers in the VIP area would return to the general area because they had already been to the VIP area once. This way, the sales in the VIP area would increase, and they would naturally make a lot of money. The food in the sovereign area on the third floor should be the best, right? Are you qualified to enter? Bu Feng thought for a while and suddenly asked. Since it's the sovereign area, only people of noble status in the Light Wind Empire can enter. Children of officials like us don't have the qualifications to enter. Back then, Sun Qixiang wanted to force his way in, but he was beaten out by a 6th-grade battle emperor, Xiao Xiaolong said. Bu Feng furrowed his eyebrows. Even you guys don't have the qualifications to enter the sovereign area? Only the emperor, the minister of the left, my father, General Ouyang, and other high-ranking officials can enter the sovereign area, Xiao Xiaolong said. In addition, he also vaguely mentioned the background of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. While the two of them were talking, they arrived in front of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's extremely lavishly decorated entrance. "Oh my, isn't this young Master Xiao? I haven't seen you in a while. Are you here for a meal today? Quick, come in." Just as the four of them arrived at the entrance, a middle-aged woman with a fiery figure and a pretty face swayed her waist as she walked in. Her charming voice was filled with joy. Xiao Xiaolong elegantly smiled and lightly nodded. "Elder Sister Chun, long time no see. Your figure has become even more fiery." The middle-aged woman, called Elder Sister Chun, immediately covered her mouth and laughed. The fiery figure in front of her chest was bouncing up and down. Even in today's temperature, her snow-white chest was still exposed. She did not seem to be bothered by the cold in the slightest. The middle-aged woman smiled and guided the crowd into the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Bufang did not say anything. His gaze swept across Elder Sister Chun's body before he indifferently withdrew it. With a solemn expression, he stepped into the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. The moment he entered, he could feel the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's fiery popularity. The hall on the first floor was very spacious, and there were many tables arranged inside. Every table was occupied by people who were eating heartily. From the expressions on their faces, it was obvious that they were eating to their heart's content. "Young Master Xiao, it's 4 people this time, right? Shall we go to the VIP area?" Elder Sister Chun swayed her waist as she led the way in front while casually chatting with the customers. "Yes, there's a total of 4 people. Elder Sister Chun, please arrange a seat." Xiao Xiaolong nodded his head. Just as he was about to reply, Bufang suddenly opened his mouth and interrupted him. "Wait, let's eat in the general area first. Please arrange a seat." "Eh? We're eating in the general area?" This time, not only Xiao Xiaolong, even Xiao Yinyu and Ouyang Xiaoi were extremely astonished. "Yes, of course. If you guys want to go to the VIP area first, that's fine too. After I finish eating in the general area, I'll go to the VIP area as well," Bufang added. This time, the gazes of Xiao Xiaolong and the rest became much more playful. The red lips under Xiao Yinyu's veil even slightly curled up. This Bufang was trying to stir up trouble. "All right, Elder Sister Chun, please arrange a seat for us in the general area first," Xiao Xiaolong said to Elder Sister Chun with a grin. Elder Sister Chun's pretty face was filled with doubt. Her red phoenix eyes fell on Bufang's body. After sweeping a glance at him, she withdrew her gaze and charmingly said, "All right, everyone, please follow me." Under Elder Sister Chun's arrangement, everyone quickly sat on an empty seat. Bufang sat upright, took off the scarf around his neck, and opened up his cashmere coat. With a solemn expression, he reached out his hand and wiped it on the table. An oily feeling instantly emerged, and his fingers were even stained with jet-black grease. "Poor hygiene affects appetite," Bufang coldly commented. Xiao Xiaolong, who had just sat down and was about to order, suddenly froze and blankly stared at Bufang. Ouyang Xiaoi and Xiao Yinyu also blinked their charming eyes and looked strangely at Bufang. Elder Sister Chun, who had a voluptuous figure, was extremely embarrassed. However, she was discontentedly cursing in her heart. "This is the general area. Of course, the hygiene is bad. Why are you still being picky in the general area? Give us all the dishes in the general area that you think are top-notch." Bufang sat down and expressionlessly said to Elder Sister Chun, "All the top-notch dishes. There are 10 top-notch dishes in the general area, and each dish is worth 500 silver coins. Are you sure you want to serve all of them?" Elder Sister Chun suspiciously looked at Bufang. It was not that she did not believe in Bufang. After all, Bufang came together with Xiao Xiaolong. Xiao Xiaolong was the son of the general's mansion, so he would naturally not be lacking in gold coins. If the young man in front of her was Xiao Xiaolong's friend, he would naturally not be lacking in money either. However, if he was not lacking in money, why did he come to the general area to show off? Elder Sister Chun, to serve the dishes. He might be lacking in anything but money, Xiao Xiaolong said to Elder Sister Chun with a chuckle. Since Xiao Xiaolong had already said so, Elder Sister Chun immediately arranged for someone to prepare the dishes. Once Elder Sister Chun left, Xiao Xiaolong winked at Bu Fong and said, "Owner Bu, are you planning to try all the good dishes in the Immortal Phoenix restaurant?" The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. He indifferently glanced at him and solemnly said, "That's right. I'm here to nitpick today." Chapter 69. Looking for trouble and still saying it in such a dignified manner. This is indeed in line with Owner Bu's personality. Xiao Xiaolong and the others were speechless. They clearly did not understand why Bu Fong would come to the Immortal Phoenix restaurant to look for trouble. "Owner Bu, do you have a grudge against the Immortal Phoenix restaurant?" Xiao Yinyu's pleasant voice rang out as she softly asked. It was obvious that not only Xiao Xiaolong, even someone as intelligent as herself was puzzled. Bu Fong glanced at Xiao Yinyu and met the latter's eyes that were as clear as a spring. "Do I need a reason to look for trouble? If I want to look for trouble, I'll look for it." All right. This answer was impeccable and very much like Owner Bu's. The crowd stopped talking and quietly waited for the dishes to be served. The general area was extremely noisy and the air was filled with all kinds of smells. There was the smell of low-quality wine and the strange fragrance of food and dishes. All of these smells were mixed together, and it was as if a bottle of 5 flavors had been knocked over. There was an obvious look of disdain in Xiao Xiaolong's eyes. Even though the Immortal Phoenix restaurant was famous throughout the Imperial City, the hygiene in the general area was indeed not good. The main reason was that once there were too many people, it would be difficult to maintain hygiene. "The dishes are served." A call rang out. A waiter with a white towel draped over his shoulder slowly walked over while carrying a dish. "Customer, your dish, red braised lion's head." A smile hung on the waiter's face as he placed a plate of steaming red braised lion's head on Bu Fong's table. The red braised lion's head that was drizzled with red sauce had a gorgeous luster and was emitting a meaty fragrance. Faint steam rose from the dish and rolled around in front of the crowd before dispersing. "This red braised lion's head looks pretty good," Xiao Xiaolong said with a smile as he slightly nodded his head after glancing at the dish. He picked up his chopsticks and lightly tapped the table before picking up a lion's head that was wrapped in red sauce. Expressionless, Bu Fong picked up his chopsticks and picked up a lion's head into his bowl. He first used his chopsticks to poke the lion's head to feel its hardness, then brought his nose close to it and sniffed it. Ouyang Xiaoyi and Xiao Yinyu also took a bite of the red braised lion's head. After all, it was one of the 10 signature dishes of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. The taste was indeed pretty good. Although it was not as delicious as the dishes cooked in Bu Fong's restaurant, it was still pretty good when compared to ordinary dishes. Ouyang Xiaoyi finished her food in a few bites. Her face was flushed with satisfaction. Xiao Xiaolong smacked his lips and drank a mouthful of water. Then, he picked up another meatball and ate it. There were only 5 meatballs in a plate of red braised meatballs, and he ate 2 by himself. "Owner Bu, you should eat as well. The taste of this lion's head is pretty good." "The chefs of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant are quite skilled," Xiao Xiaolong said to Bu Fong while chewing on the lion's head. Bu Fong did not reply. He took a small bite, and the sauce tasted slightly astringent. After chewing a few times, Bu Fong swallowed it and put down his chopsticks. He expressionlessly stopped tasting the dish. Bu Fong's actions caused Xiao Yinyu and the others to look at him with a strange expression. The sauce of this red braised meatball is too salty and astringent. It's obvious that too much salt was added. Moreover, the sugar in the sauce has not melted yet, so it tastes slightly astringent. As for the lion's head, the so-called lion's head is a meatball that is precisely kneaded together with 70% lean meat and 30% fat meat. It's also known as the 4 happiness meatball. Furthermore, the lean meat has to be chopped by yourself, and the fat meat can't be too greasy. The lean meat in this dish was obviously not chopped finely, and there are still shreds of meat mixed together. The fat meat is also too greasy and will affect the taste. "I give you a bad review," Bu Fong lightly said as he lightly exhaled a breath of air. Under the dumbfounded gazes of Xiao Xiaolong, and the others, Bu Fong said a lot of words and criticized the red braised meatball to the point that it was not good at all. Clack! Xiao Xiaolong smacked his lips and dropped his chopsticks on the table. After hearing Bu Fong's review, he looked at the lion's head again and felt that it was not as delicious as before. It turned out that there were so many flaws in this meatball. Originally, he still had some appetite. However, after hearing Bu Fong's review, he lost all interest in eating and placed the lion's head back into the bowl. Owner Bu was really here to cause trouble. Even the signature dish of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's public area was criticized so miserably. However, with Owner Bu's culinary skills, his review should be very pertinent. The second dish was served. It was a plate of steamed fish. The fresh fragrance of the fish was constantly emitting from the fish's body, and the warm steam filled the air. The appearance of the steamed fish was well preserved. There were a few scratches on the fish's body. As the fish meat was steamed, the scratches were pushed open, revealing the tender fish meat inside. A faint fish broth flowed on the plate and enveloped the steamed fish. This time, Xiao Xiaolong and the others did not pick up their chopsticks. They were all looking at Bu Fong and waiting for him to start his review. Bu Fong nodded his head and picked up his chopsticks. He first used the chopsticks to touch the fish meat at the neck area of the fish. A slight springiness came from the chopsticks and caused Bu Fong to nod his head. It seemed like the control of the heat of the steamed fish was quite good. He used the tip of his chopsticks to touch the fish broth and placed it into his mouth. The fish broth contained a very faint salty taste. However, this slight salty taste caused Bu Fong's expression to instantly turn ugly. Bah! Bu Fong lightly spat outside the table. Then, he picked up a glass of water and drank a mouthful to dilute the salty taste in his mouth. You didn't even remove the basic salty taste of the fish. There's no need to taste it. The fish meat definitely contains a fishy taste. This fishy taste is the biggest taboo when it comes to steamed fish, and it is also the biggest failure. Bu Fong's expression was extremely ugly. Therefore, his tone was somewhat cold as he gave his evaluation. Xiao Xiaolong and the others were once again stunned. Bu Fong had already judged the steamed fish to be a failure before he even tasted the fish meat. This was too unbelievable. Xiao Xiaolong, who did not believe it, used his chopsticks to pick up a piece of fish meat and put it into his mouth. The taste was actually not bad. The salty taste that Bu Fong mentioned was actually not very strong. Even though it was still there, it was barely bearable. Cooking is all about rigor. Any mistake will affect the taste of the food. The salty taste should not exist in the first place. Since it exists, it is a failure, Bu Fong mercilessly criticized. Xiao Xiaolong and the others nodded their heads in a half-understanding manner. Next, the waiter brought up a few more dishes. However, when he saw that most of the dishes on the table were still in good condition, he was a little stunned. Some dishes were practically untouched, while others were only touched 2 or 3 times. However, overall, the customers on the table only tasted a single bite of these dishes. This was practically an inconceivable thing in the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. The dishes of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's chefs had conquered the stomachs of countless people. When the waiter brought up the dishes again, he told Elder Sister Chun about the strange situation on the table. Elder Sister Chun was also startled for a moment. Then, with a face full of suspicion, she carried the last dish to Bu Fong's table. "Ayo, young Master Xiao, why aren't you guys eating? Is it not to your liking?" Elder Sister Chun's eyes slightly narrowed as she arrived in front of the table. When she saw the table full of almost untouched dishes, she opened her mouth and asked. Bu Fong was currently in a very bad mood. Not being able to taste good dishes would naturally affect his mood. Xiao Xiaolong and the others somewhat helplessly pointed at Bu Fong and said to Elder Sister Chun, "This young Master Bu said that your dishes are all too inferior and completely inedible." What? Young Master Xiao must be joking. Who in the Imperial City doesn't know the taste of our Immortal Phoenix restaurant's dishes? Even though this is the general area, even the dishes in the general area are not the slightest bit inferior to the signature dishes of the other big restaurants. Elder Sister Chun chuckled and waved her hand. Her gaze fell on Bu Fong's body with an unpleasant expression on her face. Bu Fong ignored her. He picked up his chopsticks and picked up the last dish. After taking a bite, Bu Fong put down his chopsticks, shook his head, and indifferently opened his mouth. For this dish of stir-fried bamboo shoots with shrimp, the bamboo shoots chosen are too old. Some of the bamboo shoots are too bitter and can't be chewed on. The quality of the shrimp used is also a mix of good and bad. Some of them are alive, while others are dead. The difference in taste is too strong. I give this dish a bad rating. After elder sister Chun heard Bu Fong's evaluation, she was completely dumbfounded. Then, she was so angry that her chest continuously heaved up and down. This zombie-faced man was indeed here to pick a fight. The signature dish of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's general area was actually evaluated as useless. What right did he have to give such an evaluation? Elder Sister Chun rubbed her voluptuous chest and coldly glanced at Bu Fong as she said, "From your appearance, you should also be a chef, right? Since you're a chef, you should know. What right do you have to evaluate the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's dishes?" Chapter 70. Elder Sister Chun was enraged. Xiao Xiaolong's friend was clearly here to nitpick. Even though the dishes in the general area were not cooked by the top chef of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant, it was impossible for them to be as bad as this person said. Xiao Xiaolong and the rest looked at Elder Sister Chun with a strange expression. Bu Fong was not qualified to evaluate the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's dishes? That was the biggest joke in the world. Even the emperor was conquered by Bu Fong's dishes. What right did the Immortal Phoenix restaurant have to be so arrogant? Elder Sister Chun's words were very arrogant, but she had the right to be arrogant because she was very confident in the skills of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant chefs. There was basically no restaurant in the Light Wind Empire that could compare to the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. The chefs they hired were the best in the entire empire. Xiao Xiaolong and the rest's ridiculing gazes made Elder Sister Chun slightly uncomfortable. Her pretty face slightly scrunched up as she said, "Am I wrong?" Xiao Xiaolong and the rest chuckled and slightly shook their heads without saying a word. Bu Fong was also expressionless as he glanced at Elder Sister Chun. That glance was as if he was looking at a clown. Bu Fong stood up and glanced at Elder Sister Chun. He took out some gold coins and placed them on the table as he lightly said, "Bring me to the second floor. The dishes on the first floor are all bad." "You!" Elder Sister Chun was furious. How could this person be so arrogant? Who did he think he was? What right did he have to criticize the dishes cooked by the Immortal Phoenix restaurant chefs? When Xiao Xiaolong and the rest saw that Bu Fong was going to the second floor, their eyes immediately lit up and they all stood up. Xiao Xiaolong smiled as he moved closer to Elder Sister Chun and softly said, "Elder Sister Chun, don't be angry. My friend's personality is just like that. Bring us to the second floor. The dishes on the second floor cannot be compared to those on the first floor. When the time comes, my friend might not give such an evaluation." "Okay, I want to see if this arrogant brat will still be so arrogant when he reaches the second floor." Elder Sister Chun tenderly snorted as she turned around and led the way while twisting her waist. Xiao Xiaolong and the others let out a carefree smile and followed after him. The second floor of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant was much narrower than the first floor. When Bu Fong and the rest stepped onto the second floor from the staircase, they could feel the different atmosphere on the second floor. Different from the noise on the first floor, the second floor was very quiet and harmonious. The decoration was very gorgeous and exquisite. There were many spirit herbs on the second floor that released fresh air. Some diners were sitting on the seats and eating the dishes gently. Elder Sister Chun swayed her body and walked at the front. She brought Bu Fong and the others to an empty table. She didn't have a good expression towards Bu Fong. She coldly said to Bu Fong, "Look at the menu. What do you want to eat?" Bu Fong took the menu. There were about 20 dishes written on it, and the price of each dish was very expensive. Although it was much lower than Fong's little store, it was already an unattainable price for ordinary people. Bu Fong merely glanced at them before he placed the menu on the table and said indifferently, "Bring out the dishes that you think are the best on the second floor." Elder sister Chun's pupils constricted as she coldly looked at Bufong. Judging from his tone, this brat was still looking for trouble? He dared to look for trouble on the second floor of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant? Very well. Today, I'll let you experience the dishes of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Elder sister Chun angrily snorted. She turned around and left to arrange for someone to prepare the dishes. After elder sister Chun left, Xiao Xiaolong asked Bufong in a low voice, "Owner Bu, are you really going to criticize all of the dishes of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant today? Won't this have a bad influence? After all, harmony breeds wealth." Bufong slightly frowned. He glanced at Xiao Xiaolong and simply said, "They should be grateful to me for pointing out their shortcomings." Ouyang Xiaoi could not help but burst out laughing. Owner Bu's serious manner of spouting nonsense was too hilarious. Xiao Yinyu also covered her mouth and chuckled. A trace of captivating red appeared on her beautiful face. Bufong, on the other hand, was extremely puzzled. He was speaking the truth. The points he commented on were the most fatal flaws of these dishes. If he could improve on these flaws, the taste of these dishes would at least be raised to a whole new level. After a while, the aroma of the dishes drifted over. Elder sister Chun swayed her hips as she leisurely walked over with the dishes in her hands. She was carrying a large round plate with flower crabs that emitted a fragrant aroma. These flower crabs were cut into two halves and then placed vertically on the plate. From afar, it looked like a splendid cluster of flowers. This is a very famous dish of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's VIP area, the pan-fried flower crab. After elder sister Chun placed the dishes on the table, she looked at Bufong provocatively. Smelling the fragrance of the flower crabs, Xiao Xiaolong could no longer hold himself back. In the past, he would always order this dish whenever he visited the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. He picked up a flower crab and placed it into his bowl. He impatiently peeled off the shell and began to gorge himself on it. Bufong also picked up half a flower crab. The color of this flower crab was well controlled. The fragrance emitted from its red shell after it was pan-fried was quite appetizing. Bufong took out a pair of chopsticks and pried open the outer shell of the flower crab. The fragrant crab meat came into view. The white and tender crab meat was giving off faint steam, and with the contrast of the red outer shell, it added a bit of appetite. Bufong did not immediately start eating the crab meat. Instead, he used his chopsticks to scrape the crab butter within the shell. The crab butter was orange-yellow in color and was extremely tempting. Even though the aroma was not very strong, it was the essence of a crab. Bufong ate a mouthful of the crab paste that was left in the crab shell. He furrowed his brows and did not say anything. He then took another bite of the white and fragrant crab meat, his face still as solemn as before. After eating a mouthful of crab butter and crab meat, Bufong put down the flower crab without saying anything. "What's wrong? You can't point out any flaws, right? The dishes on the first floor are prepared for ordinary commoners, so you can definitely be picky. However, on the second floor, the dishes here are all prepared for distinguished guests, for the influential people in the Imperial City. How can you still be picky?" When elder sister Chun saw that Bufong was not speaking, she immediately began to mock and ridicule him. Xiao Xiaolong and the others were also startled and looked at Bufong in puzzlement. However, based on their understanding of Bufong, this guy would definitely not give up on the opportunity to use his venomous tongue. "It's not that I don't want to say anything, but I have nothing to say. Is this the signature dish of your Immortal Phoenix restaurant's second floor?" Bufong glanced at the complacent elder sister Chun and lightly said with a curl of his lips, "Let's not talk about how well the flower crab is cooked. Just the choice of flower crab is already a stain on this dish. The most important thing about the pan-fried flower crab is the choice of flower crab. The meat of your flower crab is not tender enough and is as light as water. With just one look, you can tell that it was artificially bred. The texture of the meat is hollow, and the taste is much worse than that of a wild flower crab. Furthermore, there's the problem with the frying. The control of the oil temperature was not done well, and the crab butter was overcooked, causing it to lose its aftertaste. Overall, I give a bad review." It was not that Bufong did not want to say anything, but he was a little too lazy to do so. When he first heard about the pan-fried flower crab, he was still looking forward to it. However, after he took a bite, his expectations plummeted. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he had fallen from the sky into an abyss. Elder Sister Chun was stunned. Xiao Xiaolong and the others were also stunned. It turned out that there were so many flaws in this dish that they could not tell at all. Oomph! Who doesn't know how to spout nonsense? Who knows if your review is correct or not? Elder Sister Chun coldly laughed. Bufong indifferently glanced at her before withdrawing his gaze. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. Hurry up and serve the other dishes. I've already lost my patience with your dishes. That's right. What did it have to do with Bufong, whether Elder Sister Chun believed it or not? Bufong was only here to complete the system's quest, not to give Elder Sister Chun some guidance. Elder Sister Chun, what happened? What are you arguing about? Just as Elder Sister Chun was angered by Bufong to the point that her chest was heaving up and down, a slender figure slowly walked over and asked. When Elder Sister Chun saw the newcomer, her eyes immediately lit up and she said, Boss Qian, hurry up and come over. This guy said that the dishes of our Immortal Phoenix restaurant are not well cooked. Chapter 71. Qian Bao was wearing a brocade robe. His hands were on his hips, and his stomach was sticking out, exposing the dazzling jade-inlaid belt on his waist. He swaggered 8 steps forward in order to satisfy his vanity by feeling the envious gazes of others when they saw his belt. Who dares to shamelessly say that the dishes of my Immortal Phoenix restaurant are not delicious? Qian Bao was immediately unhappy when he heard someone say that the dishes of his Immortal Phoenix restaurant were not delicious. He walked to Elder Sister Chun's side and followed her gaze. He saw Xiao Xiaolong and the others. Oh, isn't this the great scholar of our imperial city, young Master Xiao? I haven't seen you in a long time. Aya, Goddess Yinyu and Little Princess Ouyang are here too. I apologize for not welcoming you earlier. And this is... Qian Bao knew how to conduct himself, or rather, he knew how to do business. He had his own way of dealing with people. Simply put, he was very tactful. That was why he was able to build a small restaurant from scratch into the scale of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Of course, there were many people supporting him. However, Qian Bao's own hard work and talent were also indispensable. You can just call him Young Master Bu, Xiao Xiaolong introduced with a smile. Xiao Xiaolong introduced with a smile. He did not dare to reveal Bufong's name. Recently, the Black-Hearted store was flourishing within the Imperial City and had long become the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's biggest competitor. If he were to reveal Bufong's name at this moment, there was no guarantee that Qian Bao would ruthlessly kill Bufong. Young Master Bu, Qian Bao searched his mind and realized that there was no influential family in the Imperial City with the surname Bu. However, Qian Bao still cupped his hands at Bufong with a face full of smiles and said, So it's young Master Bu. I've heard a lot about you. May I know if the dishes of our restaurant do not suit your taste? It's not that it doesn't suit my taste, it's that the cooking is too lousy. I give it a bad review, Bufong said with a serious expression. Lousy cooking? Qian Bao looked at Bufong's serious face and could not help but be dumbfounded. It had been a long time since he met someone who dared to come to the Immortal Phoenix restaurant to find trouble. When the Immortal Phoenix restaurant was first established, there were quite a number of shills from other restaurants that came to pick a fight with them. It was only natural that their dishes were flawed. However, now, as the Immortal Phoenix restaurant developed, he spent a lot of money to hire chefs from all over the Light Wind Empire. Every chef had their own signature dish, which was why the Immortal Phoenix restaurant was now famous. Young Master Bu, you must be joking. Ask the entire Imperial City. Who would dare to say that the dishes of my Immortal Phoenix restaurant are not delicious? Qian Bao was still smiling as he said this. However, his words were filled with a domineering aura. If it doesn't taste good, it just doesn't taste good. These dishes aren't well cooked. You can serve any dish to me, and I can point out the shortcomings. Bufong said lightly. He didn't want to argue with Qian Bao too much. Buffon's words made Qian Bao squint his eyes slightly. This guy is really arrogant. How dare he say such nonsense? Could it be that he was really confident? Fine. Since young Master Bu is so insistent, I will serve a dish and let the chef confront you face to face. If you can convince my Immortal Phoenix restaurant's chef, I, Qian Bao, will concede. Qian Bao withdrew the smile on his face and said in an indifferent manner, was he planning to confront him face to face? Xiao Xiaolong and the others were slightly surprised. Then, they became extremely excited. Qian Bao didn't know who Buffon was, but they clearly knew that since Buffon dared to say such a thing, he was naturally confident. That was because Buffon's culinary skills were much better than the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's chef. No, I don't need your consent. How about this? Let's make a bet. If I can convince your chef with the shortcomings I point out, you'll let us go to the third floor of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. On the other hand, if I lose, I'll compensate you with 100 times the price of these dishes. How about it? Buffon expressionlessly said. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. A compensation of 100 times the price. This owner Bu was indeed rich and overbearing. The total price of so many dishes here had already exceeded 500 gold coins. 100 times the price. That would be 50,000 gold coins. Even Qian Bao's heart trembled at this price. The gaze he used to look at Buffon no longer contained the slightest bit of contempt. How could a person who dared to take out 50,000 gold coins as a wager have such a simple identity? Furthermore, he was accompanied by Xiao Xiaolong and the other second-generation officials. It was obvious that his background was not simple. Was his goal to enter the third floor of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant? Did he want to taste the dishes on the third floor? Could it be that he was also planning to nitpick on the third floor? At this moment, Qian Bao thought of many things. In the end, his eyes narrowed as he slapped the table and said, "Fine, I agree." Buffon nodded and gestured for Qian Bao to point out a dish at random. Qian Bao placed his hands behind his back and said to Elder Sister Chun, "Elder Sister Chun, get someone to serve the signature dish of our Immortal Phoenix restaurant's second floor, dry-fried rock carp." When Elder Sister Chun heard Qian Bao's words, her eyes immediately lit up. The boss was indeed the boss. Once this dish was served, she wanted to see how this brat could nitpick on it. The dry-fried rock carp was the best dish on the second floor of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Originally, it could have been promoted to the third floor. However, because the boss stipulated that only 3 dishes could be served on the third floor, the dry-fried rock carp was eliminated. However, regardless of its taste or appearance, the dry-fried rock carp was definitely qualified to be promoted to the third floor of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. "Young Master Bu, please take a seat. Please wait for a moment," Qian Bao said to Buffon with a smile. He gestured for Xiao Xiaolong and the rest to sit down and wait for the dishes to be served. Buffon did not say anything. He merely sat on his seat and quietly waited for the dry-fried rock carp that Qian Bao mentioned. Qian Bao, on the other hand, was happily chatting with Xiao Xiaolong and the rest. After a while, a rich aroma drifted over, causing many of the diners on the second floor to stop and look at it. Elder Sister Chun carried a large plate over. Steaming hot steam was rising from the plate. This time, she did not even dare to move her voluptuous waist for fear of spilling the dish. Behind Elder Sister Chun was a plump fatty wearing a chef's coat. The fatty's face was filled with arrogance. "The dry-fried rock carp is here. Please enjoy your meal," Elder Sister Chun coquettishly said as she bent down and placed the dish on the table. "Boss Qian, I heard that someone came looking for trouble, so I came over to take a look. I want to see if this guy can point out any flaws in my dish." The fatty walked in front of Qian Bao and shouted in a loud voice. Buffon gave the fatty a glance. The fatty seemed to have sensed it and looked back at him. The muscles on his face were trembling. "Are you the one who came looking for trouble?" The fatty's senses were quite accurate. He glared at Buffon and said, "Master Chun, this is young Master Bu. Don't scare him," Qian Bao said with a smile. Buffon was expressionless as he indifferently glanced at the fatty. His gaze landed on the dry-fried rock carp. The color was golden with a hint of red. A thick layer of sauce was mixed with many side dishes. The color was bright and eye-catching, and the aroma wafted through the air. The rich aroma of the deep-fried fish spread out, whetting one's appetite. Just from the appearance, this dish was not bad. Bufang picked up his chopsticks. Under everyone's gaze, he dipped them into the sauce and placed them in his mouth. Xiao Xiaolong and the rest held their breaths as they stared at Bufang. Master Chun and Qian Bao also swallowed a mouthful of saliva as they looked at Bufang. After Bufang tasted the sauce, he picked up a piece of fish and placed it in his mouth. After tasting it for a while, he put down his chopsticks. From start to finish, Bufang's face was expressionless, making it impossible for others to see through his thoughts. The atmosphere suddenly became solemn. No one dared to breathe loudly. Chapter 72. Young Master Bu, how is the taste? After a long while, Bufang still did not speak. Xiao Xiaolong and the rest could no longer hold themselves back. Qian Bao even impatiently opened his mouth to ask as his eyes stared straight at Bufang. Master Chun also calmly watched with his arms crossed over his chest. This dry-roasted rock carp was his signature dish. He had cooked it for dozens of years and was already familiar with it to the peak. In his heart, it was already perfect. Bufang lightly exhaled and picked up a cup of water on the table. After drinking a mouthful, his gaze turned toward the crowd. He lightly opened his mouth and evaluated. Compared to the previous dishes that were full of flaws, this dry-roasted rock carp can be said to be on a higher level. Bufang's words immediately caused the crowd to relax. Xiao Xiaolong and the rest also grinned. Owner Bu actually opened his mouth to praise the dish. It seemed like the taste of this dish was pretty good. Since that was the case, they also had to give it a try. With this thought in his heart, Xiao Xiaolong directly picked up a piece of fish meat with his chopsticks and placed it in his mouth. The fragrant fish flavor immediately exploded in his mouth, and a faint spicy flavor spread out, causing his eyes to suddenly light up. Xiao Xiaolong nodded his head and said with a smile, "This dish is indeed pretty good. It is much better than the previous dishes." When Qian Bao heard this, his eyes immediately narrowed, and he could not conceal the smile on his face. Since everyone praised this dish, it seemed like he had won this time. Qian Bao was extremely happy and elated to be able to easily earn 50,000 gold coins. "Young Master Bu, that means this time I have won, right?" Qian Bao said to Bufang with a chuckle. However, Bufang's reaction made his heart skip a beat. He saw Bufang glance at him strangely, and the corners of his mouth seemed to be curled up into a faint smile. "I only praise the taste of this dish. Compared to the previous dishes, it is indeed pretty good. However, it is only pretty good. There are still flaws." This time, everyone was stunned. Once again, they focused their attention on Bufang. They did not expect Bufang to make such a turn. The cooking process of this dry-fried rock carp is divided into 3 steps, right? The first step is to deep-fry the rock carp until its skin is wrinkled. The second step is to fry the ingredients. The third step is to cook the deep-fried rock carp together with the stir-fried side dishes. Bufang said slowly. Master Chin's eyes narrowed slightly, because Bufang's steps of analysis were exactly the same as his cooking steps. So what? These are only the general steps. There are many more detailed processes within each step. These are the important parts of this dish. Master Chin sneered and said confidently. Bufang nodded, pointed at the dry-fried rock carp, and said, "That's right." Then I will point out a few of your flaws from the details. First, when you're processing the rock carp, you should make 2 cuts on both sides of the fish's body, right? This is the first flaw. You should make the cuts according to the length and width of the fish. It is best to make 3 cuts on the fish's body length, 2 short cuts, and 1 long cut. This will allow the fish to thoroughly absorb the flavor during frying and grilling. Master Chin frowned. All along, regardless of the size of the rock carp, he had always made 2 cuts. He had long gotten used to it and had never considered whether 3 cuts would be better. As for the depth of the cuts, I don't need to mention it. Next is the frying time. Because of the cuts, your rock carp was fried for a slightly longer time, causing the meat to age and causing the rock carp to lose its tenderness. The The stir-frying of the side dishes is not bad because it doesn't require any skill. Lastly is the grilling problem. The grilling time is a few breaths short, the broth is not thick enough, and the flavor of the fish is not deep enough. Bufong said indifferently. However, his words had already left Master Chen speechless. Originally, Master Chen wanted to retort, but after thinking about what Bufong had said, he realized that cooking it this way might have a better effect. Gulp! Master Chen swallowed a mouthful of saliva. His plump face was covered in sweat, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Was this guy a monster? How could he analyze so many flaws in his dish with just one taste? Xiao Xiaolong and the others were also dumbstruck. Owner Bu was amazing. Just one taste was enough to make the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's chef speechless. Master Chen, is what he said correct? Qian Bao's expression had already become somewhat unsightly. He frowned and asked Master Chen, who was beside him, who was continuously dripping with cold sweat. Elder Sister Chen, who was standing not far away from Qian Bao, was completely dumbstruck. She did not expect this young Master Bu to actually be so amazing. He was able to make Master Chen break out in cold sweat with just a few words. Boss Qian, what young Master Bu said is indeed correct. I have cooked this dry-fried raw carp for dozens of years, and I am very clear about the effect that every step will have on the taste. What young Master Bu said is indeed something that I have not thought of in all these years. Master Chen calmly accepted Bufong's guidance and said to Qian Bao with a sigh. Qian Bao was slightly dumbstruck. His entire being was in a daze. The 50,000 gold coins in his hands just flew away like that. Bufong glanced at the dumbfounded Qian Bao, stood up, and expressionlessly walked forward. Xiaoyi, follow me. We're going to the third floor. Wait for us. Xiao Xiaolong, Ouyang Xiaoyi, and the rest immediately woke up from their shock and hurriedly chased after Bufong. Qian Bao also came back to his senses. His expression was somewhat unsightly. He clenched his teeth and turned his head to follow Bufong. Qian Bao brought the three of them to the third floor. This was the most distinguished floor of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Normally, it was not open to the public. Young Master Bu, please. Qian Bao's expression immediately turned serious. The previous scene had already shown that Bufong was not spouting nonsense, and that he was the real deal. The environment of the third floor was indeed much better than the second floor. The moment they stepped in, they could feel a rich amount of spirit energy drifting around. This Qian Bao actually spent a large sum of money to set up a spirit energy gathering magic array on the third floor. Xiao Xiaolong and the rest were immediately speechless. They had never been to the third floor before. This time, they stepped into the third floor with the help of Bufong and immediately felt that everything was extremely novel. Young Master Bu, please take a seat first. I will get someone to serve the dishes. There are only 3 dishes on the third floor of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant, Qian Bao said. Bufong nodded. He sat beside a rosewood square table on the third floor and quietly waited for the dishes to be served. Qian Bao's expression was solemn as he left the third floor to instruct the servants to prepare the dishes. Xiao Xiaolong and the rest were curiously looking around. Most people were extremely curious about new and novel things. However, Bufong sat there unmoving like a mountain. He closed his eyes and rested while waiting for the dishes to be served. About an hour later, Qian Bao returned. Beside him was a servant girl with a seductive and sexy figure. She was wearing a long gown that exposed her legs, and her fair and tender legs were faintly discernible. Young Master Bu, this is the first dish of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's sovereign area, red braised spirit pork. Bufong nodded. His gaze fell on the large round porcelain plate in front of him. On the porcelain plate, there was a bright red and glistening piece of pork that was emitting a rich, meaty fragrance. At first glance, the pork was fat but not greasy. It was as exquisite and beautiful as a red jade. This is the second dish of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's sovereign area, sweet and sour ribs. Another beautiful servant girl with a seductive figure placed a dish in front of Bufong. When the lid was removed, the orange-red sweet and sour ribs came into view. Bufong raised his eyebrows and curled up the corners of his mouth in interest. Huh, sweet and sour ribs? The third dish is also our Immortal Phoenix Restaurant Supreme dish, colored glazed flour duck. As he spoke of the last dish, Qian Bao's tone became much more confident. He was extremely proud and naturally revealed his confidence in this dish. Bufong narrowed his eyes as he looked at the last dish. The duck that was standing proudly on the plate was filled with confidence. The duck's wings were slightly spread, as if it was about to flap its wings and soar into the sky. Its neck was raised, forming an S shape. Bufong blinked his eyes and could not help but feel a little suspicious in his heart. This is roasted flour duck? Are you sure it's not a roasted duck that wants to fly into the sky? Chapter 73. Young Master Bu, according to the rules, you are not qualified to step onto the third floor of my Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Up until now, this sovereign area has only received the ministers of the imperial court, the emperor, and the princes. If it was not for the fact that I acknowledge young master's food appraisal ability, I would not have allowed you to step onto the third floor, even if I had to act shamelessly, Qian Bao seriously said. He attached great importance to this sovereign area, and it was because of this that he was being cautious. If the general area and the VIP area were the foundation of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant in the Imperial City, then the sovereign area on the third floor was the foundation of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's reputation in the Imperial City. Because Bufong easily pointed out the cooking process of the dry-roasted rock carp and the flaws that even Master Chun could not detect, Qian Bao seriously looked at Bufong. Bufong's appraisal could be considered as a slap in the face for the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. It was impossible for Qian Bao to swallow this loss. He had to get back at them, and the only way he could do so was to go to the third floor. Bufong glanced at Qian Bao and expressionlessly said, "If an ordinary person wants to ask me to appraise their food, I might not be in a mood to deal with them. If it was not for the special circumstances, I would not even bother to try your trash dishes." Bufong's tone was extremely indifferent. Although his words sounded like mockery, there was not the slightest hint of mockery in them. It was as if he was merely stating a fact. Qian Bao immediately froze and was somewhat speechless. However, he suddenly smiled and narrowed his eyes as he said to Bufong, "Young Master Bu, please have a taste of these 3 dishes. These are the 3 top-notch dishes of our Immortal Phoenix restaurant." Xiao Xiaolong and the others blinked their eyes as they looked at the 3 dishes with some desire. The dishes of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's sovereign area were usually not something they could even see. Although these dishes might not be as delicious as the ones in Bufong's store, those who came here to eat were not necessarily interested in the taste of the dishes, but rather their status and identity. Bufong first tasted the first dish, the red braised spirit pork. This was a dish cooked with spirit beast ingredients. Although the ingredients were only the meat of a low-end first-grade spirit beast, the chef's skills were pretty good. The meat was very refreshing and was not inferior to the dry-roasted raw carp at all. However, since it's the pork of a spirit beast, we have to be very careful in choosing the meat materials. It's a mistake to choose the meat of a battle boar for this dish. Battle boar is suitable for stewing, while flame boar is the best choice for braising. Also, there's a lack of control over the heat when braising. The sauce for braising is too sweet. After eating a mouthful of pork, Bufong expressionlessly put down his chopsticks and mercilessly evaluated the dish. In an instant, Bufong pointed out several flaws in this excellent dish. Qian Bao was dumbfounded. He quickly asked the maidservant to record down all the shortcomings Bufong had mentioned. Qian Bao was not surprised that Bufong had found so many flaws in the braised spirit pork. After all, this dish was about the same level as the dry-fried raw carp. "Young Master Bu, try this dish sweet and sour ribs," Qian Bao said. However, to his surprise, Bufong's evaluation of this dish was extremely low. He found even more flaws than the braised spirit pork. Qian Bao was confused. Why? This sweet and sour and sour ribs was obviously more delicious than the braised spirit pork. Xiao Xiaolong and the others pursed their lips and laughed. Showing off the sweet and sour ribs in front of Owner Bu. Wasn't this just asking for scolding? In their opinion, no one could surpass Bu Fong's sweet and sour ribs. Bu Fong did not pay attention to Qian Bao. He turned his gaze to the roasted flower duck that seemed as if it was about to ascend to the heavens. This plate presentation is a little interesting. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth slightly twitched. He took out his chopsticks and poked the duck's body. The slight elasticity was transmitted to Bu Fong through the chopsticks. When Qian Bao saw that Bu Fong was about to eat his signature dish, the roasted flower duck, he immediately became spirited and clapped his hands. Thereafter, a maidservant with a voluptuous figure wearing a long gown that revealed her legs gracefully walked to Bu Fong's side, bringing along a wave of fragrance. Bu Fong furrowed his brows and coldly said, "Stay away from me. The fragrance on your body is affecting my judgment of this dish." The maidservant was slightly taken aback. Her beautiful face was filled with astonishment. Her hand that was holding onto the dagger stopped in midair, and she seemed to be at a loss as to what to do. Qian Bao was taken aback for a moment. Then, he slightly furrowed his brows. The reason he hired these beautiful maidservants was to serve those high-ranking officials and dignitaries. He even spent a large sum of money to buy high-grade rouge and face powder just to make these maidservants more attractive. He did not expect that his method would instead affect his appetite. He muttered to himself for a moment and dismissed the maidservant. Then, he personally held onto the dagger and began to process the duck meat. It was obvious that Qian Bao was quite experienced in processing this dish. His hands were steady, and he quickly cut a piece of duck meat and handed it to Bu Fong. Wrapped in a piece of tissue paper, Bu Fong placed some vegetables in the tissue paper and dipped it in a little balsamic vinegar before swallowing it in one gulp. The flavor of the duck meat perfectly blended with the taste of the vegetables, bringing about an indescribable texture. Coupled with the chewy tissue paper, Bu Fong experienced an indescribable delicacy. He had to admit that the taste of his roasted flower duck was extremely good. Young Master Bu, how does the signature dish of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant taste? Qian Bao licked his lips as he looked at Bu Fong with a passionate expression. He did not believe that this dish, which even the emperor called the #1 duck of the Light Wind Empire, could not conquer this fellow. This dish is indeed not bad. Bu Fong cut another piece of duck meat. This time, he did not mix it with the tissue paper and directly swallowed it in one gulp. He was also someone who enjoyed delicious food. Every chef was a true foodie. Then, young Master Bu, can you point out the flaws of this dish? Qian Bao took a deep breath and said while staring at Bu Fong. Bu Fong unhurriedly drank a mouthful of water and simply said, "This dish can be said to be the most perfect dish in the entire Immortal Phoenix restaurant. The taste is very good. I can guess that this dish was made strictly according to the steps in the recipe. Not a single word was missing and every single detail was meticulously made," Bu Fong said. Qian Bao's pupils abruptly shrank as he stood up and looked deeply at Bu Fong. His eyes were filled with disbelief. That was right. This roasted flower duck was a recipe that he had obtained by chance. It was because of this recipe that he was able to open the Immortal Phoenix restaurant to its current level and obtain the support of that noble person. It's true that you followed the steps of the recipe, but because it was too inflexible, it lacked some variation and neglected some important points. You have to know that every recipe is recorded after constant revision and experimentation. It's not perfect, and there's still room for improvement. Just like this dish, there's a mistake in the choice of ingredients. Choice of ingredients? That's right. The recipe asked you to choose an old duck, right? Moreover, a high-quality spirit duck. However, it is actually better to choose a young duck. The skin of an old duck is too tight, and the meat is too hard. The texture is not as good as that of a young duck. As for the other flaws, they are not important, so I won't mention them, Bu Fong expressionlessly said. Qian Bao took a deep breath and calmed the shock in his heart. However, his expression was not very good. He did not agree with Bu Fong's statement. Young Master Bu, This roasted flour duck is our restaurant's signature dish and has withstood countless trials. I do not agree with your suggestion of using a young duck. I believe in the recipe more. Even though what Bufang said was very reasonable, Qianbao would not believe it so easily. After all, how could a signature dish be changed so easily? Bufang glanced at him with a calm gaze. What does it have to do with me, whether you believe it or not? I am merely evaluating the dishes. All right, since all the dishes have been evaluated, I will take my leave. Here is the money for the dishes. Bufang stood up, took out 5 crystals, and placed them on the table. Then, he gracefully walked down the stairs. Qianbao's expression was gloomy as he stood at the same spot. He looked at the 3 dishes on the table that had only taken a bite or so. His eyes were fluctuating with emotions. Young Master Bu, who exactly are you? Qianbao took a deep breath and muttered to himself. Then, he looked at Xiao Xiaolong, who was about to leave. Young Master Xiao, can you tell me who young Master Bu is? To be able to evaluate the flaws of a dish in such detail, he is definitely not an ordinary person. Could it be that he is an imperial chef from the imperial kitchen? Qianbao cupped his hands and asked. Xiao Xiaolong was stunned. A mischievous smile appeared on his face. He squinted his eyes and said, Isn't Owner Bu amazing? Not only does Owner Bu have great culinary skills, his evaluation of delicacies is also top-notch. I am truly impressed. Owner Bu, Qianbao knitted his brows. Then, he narrowed his eyes and took a deep breath. Could it be that this person is the black-hearted store's owner? Xiao Xiaolong mysteriously smiled. He did not reply to Qianbao and turned around to chase after Bufang. At this moment, Bufang had his hands behind his back and was leisurely walking. The system's serious and solemn voice echoed in his mind. Congratulations to the host for completing the abrupt mission. Taste and evaluate the 13 dishes of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant and find out the flaws. The mission reward will now be issued. Chapter 74. After wrapping the scarf around himself again, Bufang walked out of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. As soon as he walked out of the warm building, cold air assaulted his face, causing Bufang's entire body to slightly shiver. He involuntarily tightened the overcoat on his body. However, even though the temperature was very low, Bufang's heart was abnormally burning. That was because in his mind, the system announced that he had completed the quest and was about to issue the quest reward. A 10% true energy cultivation progress and an advanced cooking method for any of the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's dishes. These 2 rewards were extremely generous, so Bufang was naturally happy in his heart. Xiao Xiaolong and the others caught up and walked side by side with Bufang. Ouyang Xiaoyi and Xiao Xiaolong were chattering nonstop, constantly praising Bufang's miraculousness and awesomeness. With just a taste of a dish, he was able to render the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's chef speechless. Xiao Yinyu once again put on her veil, concealing her peerless appearance. She appeared very elegant as she quietly walked along. The 4 of them parted ways when they reached the entrance of the alleyway. Xiao Xiaolong and the others returned to their residences, while Bufang stepped into the alleyway and returned to his store. At the entrance of the store, Blackie was sleeping on its stomach. Even though Bufang had returned, he was still sleeping soundly. The quest reward has been issued. You have obtained 10% true energy cultivation progress, beginning to randomly draw a dish that has been evaluated. The system's serious and solemn voice rang out in Bufang's mind. Bufang was slightly startled. He narrowed his eyes and calmed down his mind. He was suddenly curious as to which dish he would draw. Of course, the dish that he least hoped to draw was the sweet and sour ribs, because it was already in his store's menu. In his mind, the names of the dishes rapidly flashed past and continuously changed. This was the system's random draw. Finally, the changing speed of the dishes slowed down and then stopped. Finally, they were clearly reflected in Bufang's mind. The dish drawn is pan-fried flower crab. After advancement, it is pan-fried tyrant flower crab. It was actually this dish. Bufang couldn't help but think of those rosy and fragrant flower crabs that were fried in oil. His mouth couldn't help but salivate. Compared to the sweet and sour sweet and sour ribs, the fried flower crabs were already considered pretty good. Because there was a sign on the door that said the store was closed for the day, many regular customers came in high spirits and left in disappointment. For example, Fatty Jean and the others. After waiting for a long time and realizing that the store was really not open, they left resentfully. The other customers were in the same situation. When Bu Fong returned to the store, he did not intend to open for business. It was already getting late, so he tidied up a little and stepped into the kitchen, preparing to cook the newly learned pan-fried tyrant flower crab. Phoenix Goddess Brothel. Qian Bao sat upright on the chair, holding his chin with one hand and frowning as if he was thinking about something. So, the young Master Bu is the owner of this black-hearted store? He actually came to the Immortal Phoenix restaurant and criticized all of our dishes. Who's he think he is? He doesn't even put our Immortal Phoenix restaurant in his eyes. Qian Bao clenched his fists and anger surged between his brows. Suddenly, he let go of his hand and sighed. But no matter what, this owner Bu's level is really high. He can analyze any dish with just one bite. It's simply terrifying. He originally wanted to send his chef to challenge Bu Fong's store. However, it seemed like he was lucky that he did not go. Otherwise, he would have lost a lot of face. This Bu Fong was obviously not on the same level as his Immortal Phoenix restaurant chef. However, Qian Bao was very unwilling to do nothing because swallowing insults and humiliation was not his style. Wait a minute. Qian Bao seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes immediately lit up. I can let the chef compete with him in knife skills. Without enough time to settle, knife skills cannot reach their peak. Even though they can't compare to Owner Bu in terms of cooking skills, they can use knife skills that require time to settle to defeat him. Qian Bao excitedly patted the table, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Finally, he laughed heartily. Very quickly, he ordered his men to gather all the chefs together. He wanted to select the chef with the best knife skills among them. Qian Bao had already witnessed Bu Fong's understanding and cooking skills, so he could only start with knife skills. Just as Qian Bao was starting to select the chef with the best knife skills, a blood phoenix chicken had already been quietly transported into the Crown Prince's palace. Inside the enormous Crown Prince's palace, the Crown Prince, Ji Qinggan, was standing with his hands behind his back as he curiously looked at the iron cage in front of him. Inside the cage was a chicken whose body was overflowing with color like fresh blood. Is this a 5th-grade spirit beast, the blood phoenix chicken? It indeed has a unique appearance. The corners of Ji Qinggan's mouth curled up as he nodded. Xu Shi respectfully stood nearby and said, "The blood phoenix chicken is a 5th-grade spirit beast, and its speed is extremely fast. Even though its combat strength is very weak among the 5th-grade spirit beasts, it is not inferior to a 4th-grade battle spirit. It took quite some effort to capture it." "You've worked hard, Xu Shi." The Crown Prince turned around and said with a smile as he looked at Xu Shi. Xu Shi once again bowed and did not say anything. The blood phoenix chicken and the sage herb have all been prepared. The precious medicinal ingredients are almost all gathered as well. Now, all we need to do is wait for Owner Bu to cook this elixir cuisine. If this elixir cuisine can make Father's body better, then my throne will be secured. The Crown Prince stood with his hands behind his back as he gazed at the main hall in the distance with a burning gaze. For the sake of this throne, he had sacrificed too much. Every step he took was like treading on thin ice, because he was afraid that if he took a wrong step, that beloved younger brother of his would be able to use it against him and consign him to eternal damnation. Xu Shi, get ready. I will head to Owner Bu's store tomorrow. I must cook this elixir cuisine, the Crown Prince solemnly said. Before that, information regarding this elixir cuisine must be kept a secret. King Yu's people must not find out. Yes, Your Highness, Xu Shi respectfully replied. King Yu's manor. Within a secret chamber, King Yu, Ji Qingyu, opened his eyes and spat out a mouthful of turbid air. The true energy within his body was boiling like boiling water. After a long while, it calmed down and retracted back into King Yu's body. Sixth grade Battle Emperor is indeed difficult to break through. I've been stuck at this bottleneck for more than a year. King Yu let out a long sigh and felt somewhat helpless. However, cultivation could not be rushed, and he did not have the slightest idea. After pushing open the door to the cultivation chamber, a figure shrouded in a black robe was standing at the entrance. A hoarse voice came from the figure's mouth. "Your Highness seems to be troubled by the path of cultivation. Actually, if your Highness were to cultivate our soul sex cultivation method, breaking through to 6th grade Battle Emperor wouldn't be a problem." King Yu gave him a glance and sneered. "Then turn into a monster that is neither human nor ghost like you? I am someone who is going to become the Emperor. How can I become as ugly as you?" King Yu's words were somewhat harsh and unkind. However, this was also his usual way of speaking. The head elder of the Soul sect, Hun Qinyun, did not get angry after being reprimanded. Instead, he eerily chuckled. Suddenly, a figure walked in from outside the door and handed a secret letter to Ji Qingyu. Ji Qingyu nodded and directly opened the letter to read without any hesitation. As he read, his expression became somewhat serious. "This elder brother of mine has really gone through a lot of trouble for the sake of this position. He even used this kind of method. Everyone is aware of Father's condition, and it's impossible for him to reverse the situation. Yet, he actually placed his hopes on the elixir cuisine of a small store. What a joke." With a surge of true energy in King Yu's hand, the letter was immediately incinerated and eventually turned into ashes that drifted away. His eyes were extremely cold as he said, "Hun Qinyun, it's time for you guys to show your worth. If that elder brother of mine wants to prolong Father's life, then I won't allow it. Tonight, bring some people with you to Bu Fang's little store and kill the owner. Remember, assassinate him without a sound. After all, that store is rumored to be a little unusual." Hun Qinyun laughed in his hoarse voice. "When it comes to assassination, if our soul sect claims to be second, no one in this world would dare to claim to be first. King Yu, just wait for my good news." Chapter 75. Head Elder, do you need us to take action? Behind Hun Qinyun, two soul sect experts wrapped in black robes asked. There seemed to be a spirit fire pulsating within Hun Qinyun's eyes, giving off an eerie feeling. It was as if they were facing a vengeful spirit that crawled out from hell. "Can't you see that His Highness King Yu is testing us? Even though King Yu is allied with our soul sect, he is still a member of the imperial court, and we are from the sections. We are like fire and water to begin with. If it wasn't for the throne, King Yu wouldn't have dared to break the taboo and ally with us," Hun Qinyun simply said. The spirit fire in his eyes pulsated with every sentence he spoke. "Humans will always take risks for the sake of profit. This is the case regardless of your identity." "Then, Head Elder, what do you mean?" the two soul sect experts asked in puzzlement. "A few days ago, Hun Xinwan and Xiao Jinwang escaped to that store and relied on the store's protection to stop Xiao Meng and Lian Fu, who were pursuing them. The strength of that mysterious store is not something we can imagine. Rumor has it that the store is guarded by a 9th grade supreme beast. King Yu's objective is for us to test the strength of that store. If we can kill them, that would naturally be the best," Hun Qinyun slowly said. However, even Xiao Meng and Lian Fu, two battle saints, were intercepted. For mere 6th grade battle emperors like you to assassinate them, it's the same as courting death. The pupils of the two soul sect experts immediately constricted, and a chill suddenly rose from the soles of their feet. Let Along and Ahu go. Both of them are 5th grade battle kings. They might be able to succeed by relying on our soul sect's cultivation method. Even if they fail, we'll only lose 2 battle kings, Hun Qinyun sinisterly said as he turned around. Night fell. The early winter night brought with it a penetrating chill. The gray clouds in the sky moved quietly under the blowing of the wind, covering the 2 round crescent moons that were echoing each other vaguely. Inside Fong Fong's little store, Bu Fong had already changed into a set of comfortable clothes. His long hair was tied up with a velvet rope, and his forehead was clean and clean. Pan-fried tyrant flower crab. This dish tests the quality of the ingredients and the control of the heat during the pan-frying process. Bu Fong muttered as he walked into the kitchen. At this moment, he planned to start practicing the dish that he had randomly drawn, the pan-fried tyrant flower crab. Flower crab was a type of sea crab belonging to the distant sea Portunus. Because of the little patterns on its shell, it was called flower crab. The flesh of flower crab was tender, slender, and white. It was as beautiful as a silverfish and was rich in nutrients. Of course, this was an ordinary flower crab. According to Bu Fong's understanding of the system, this tyrant flower crab was definitely not an ordinary flower crab. At the very least, it should be a spirit beast. When he arrived at the kitchen, there was a large water jar on the kitchen floor. There was no water in the water jar, but there was a giant flower crab with its legs and pincers tied up. This flower crab was very beautiful. Its entire body was a fiery red color, and the deep red patterns on its body intersected with each other, forming a dazzling and beautiful painting. Tyrant flower crab, a 5th-grade spirit beast found in the desolate sea region. Its attack power is extremely strong, and its battle prowess is terrifying. It usually lives in groups and is one of the most terrifying groups in the desolate sea region. However, its flesh is delicious, and it is an extremely good ingredient. The system solemnly and earnestly introduced the tyrant flower crab's information to Bu Fong. Bu Fong narrowed his eyes. He knew that this tyrant flower crab was definitely not an ordinary sea crab. The system's goal was to cook exquisite delicacies, so the ingredients provided were definitely top-notch. Bu Fong expressionlessly pulled out a sharp-edged kitchen knife from the table. The sharp-edged kitchen knife glinted with a cold light. Bu Fong casually twirled the knife in his hand, and it made a flower of knife light in his hand. The tyrant flower crab was tied up with a velvet rope and obediently lay in the water jar. It was hard to imagine that this was actually a 5th-grade spirit beast. Bu Fong flipped the tyrant flower crab over. The tyrant flower crab was still spitting out bubbles and was ignorant. After flipping the abdomen of the tyrant flower crab, Bu Fong stabbed the sharp kitchen knife towards the top of its abdomen. In that instant, the tyrant flower crab fiercely began to struggle. The crab's eyes rolled around non-stop, and the bubbles coming out of its mouth increased. After around an hour, the tyrant flower crab finally stopped struggling. The velvet rope that was tied up with the large pincers was also slightly loosened. After removing the cover of the flower crab's abdomen and tearing it off, Bu Fong began to clean and process the tyrant flower crab. When everything was done, Bu Fong prepared a frying pan and poured some oil into it to heat it up. Taking out the heavy kitchen knife that he used every morning to train his meteor cutting technique, Bu Fong untied the velvet rope that was tied up the tyrant flower crab. When the temperature of the oil was just right, Bu Fong's gaze immediately sharpened. He ruthlessly chopped down with a heavy knife and directly cut the tyrant flower crab into 2 halves. The cut was incomparably brilliant. Bu Fong's hand speed was extremely fast. The instant the tyrant flower crab was cut open, he took advantage of the fact that the crab meat had yet to flow out and directly covered it on top of the frying pan. Sizzle, sizzle. A rich fragrance instantly spread out from the frying pan. That was the reaction of the crab meat and crab meat coming into contact with the hot oil. Next was the control of the heat. Regarding this, Bu Fong was still very experienced. Even though the tyrant flower crab was huge, it was not a problem for Bu Fong. Soon, the pan-fried tyrant flower crab was done. The 2 halves of the tyrant flower crab were placed on the plate. Their outer shells became even more scarlet. Under the cover of the oil, they flickered with a bit of brilliance under the illumination of the lamplight. The crab meat was extremely fragrant after being pan-fried. Coupled with Bu Fong's control of the heat, the crab meat was white and tender. It was emitting hot steam, and it greatly stimulated one's appetite. Bu Fong licked his lips and wiped off the water stains on his hands. Then, he sat on a chair and began to gorge himself. As expected, it is 100 times more delicious than the Immortal Phoenix restaurant's pan-fried flower crab. How can my culinary skills be so amazing? As Bu Fong ate, he calmly thought to himself, The amount of half a tyrant flower crab was just right for Bu Fong. Therefore, the remaining half entered Xiao Bai's stomach for recycling. After tidying up everything, Bu Fong stretched his waist and yawned. After eating for an entire day, he was a little tired. It was time for him to rest early. Maintaining sleep was extremely important for a young man who wanted to become the god of cooking. The lights were extinguished, and everything returned to darkness and silence once again. Deep into the night, the sound of two figures piercing through the air suddenly came from outside the alleyway. In the darkness of the night, two pitch-black figures were almost impossible to catch with the naked eye. The two of them were extremely agile. Sticking close to the bluestone walls of the alleyway, they practically did not make the slightest sound as they walked. Bu Fong's store was divided into two floors. The first floor was the store's business area, while the second floor was filled with many rooms with windows. Bu Fong's room was one of them. Bu Fong's room was very comfortable. With a wide open window, sunlight could shine through the window, and it was extremely warm. However, because it was currently winter, Bu Fong tightly locked the window to prevent the cold wind from blowing in. The aura of the two figures was almost completely restrained. Each of them was on one side of the window. At the entrance of the store, Blackie, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly twitched its nose. It opened its sleepy and hazy eyes and glanced upward. Were two little mice of the 5th grade doing here in the middle of the night? Their cultivation technique is quite peculiar. It's a pity that they met me, the Lord Go. However, they're only two little mice of the 5th grade. I, the Lord Go, am too lazy to deal with them. Woof, I'm so sleepy. Blackie let out a snort and continued to bury its head as it fell into a deep sleep. A light flashed in the eyes of the two battle kings from the Soul Sect. One of them placed his hand on the window, and the window immediately opened. The two of them looked at each other in surprise. It seemed like they did not expect things to be this easy. However, they did not have the time to think too much about it. The two of them scuttled into the room as light as swallows. Chapter 76. When the two of them landed on the ground, the windows were naturally shut without making the slightest sound. They were very experienced in assassinations. They had even assassinated ministers of the imperial court before. They did not care about the owner of a small restaurant at all. If it was not for their leader solemnly reminding them to be careful during this mission, they would not even bother to be so cautious. After all, their target was too weak. The place that Along and Ahu entered was not the bedroom where Bu Fong was. The room was cold and empty, without a single person in sight. Along slightly narrowed his eyes and pointed forward. Their figures flashed, and they pushed open the door. When the door was pushed open, it actually did not make the slightest sound. Everything was done in silence. After walking out of the room, the two of them arrived at a corner. The left corner was where they would go downstairs. The stairs were gloomy and gloomy, as if it could swallow a person's soul, causing them to involuntarily feel terrified. Along swallowed a mouthful of saliva and forced himself to retract his gaze. Their gazes fell on a tightly locked door in front of them. They looked at each other and were both delighted. From within the door, they could hear the sound of steady breathing. It seemed like the owner of the small restaurant was in that room. They gently pushed the door, but it did not open. It was obviously locked. Along was not in a hurry. He took out a thin and long iron wire from his bosom. The true energy in his body surged and covered the surface of the iron wire with a thin layer. He inserted the iron wire that was covered with true energy into the keyhole. Then, the true energy changed and directly filled the keyhole. With a slight twist, a slight click, the door opened. So easy? Along was surprised again. He felt that it was not as dangerous as his leader said. The two of them pushed open the door and looked inside. They could not see anything in the darkness. The two of them frowned and planned to sneak in and immediately launch a fatal attack. However, suddenly, the two of them felt a chill all over their bodies. They wanted to take a step forward, but they also froze on the spot. It was a chill that spread from the bottom of their hearts and instantly covered their bodies. It was like a cold wind blowing from an extremely cold place. The two of them suddenly opened their eyes wide, and their pupils shrank to the size of beans. They did not dare to move in the slightest. Two red rays of light bloomed from behind them and locked onto their bodies. Who is it? Along's entire body began to tremble. He turned his head with great difficulty and looked back, just in time to meet the red light. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flickered with a red light. It raised its mechanical hand and directly grabbed the two men's necks, easily lifting them up. Sensing target's killing intent towards Master. Searching for a solution. The processing plan has been locked. Activate immediately. Plan kill. Rays of light shot out of Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes, as if it was searching for some data. Then, the plan was confirmed, and Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes instantly turned dark purple. The mechanical arm exerted force. Along's face was full of fear as he struggled. He wanted to break free from the steel-like mechanical hand. He wanted to urge the true qi in his body, but every time the true qi poured into his hand, it would dissipate before he could strike. Along felt the steel clamp around his neck becoming tighter and tighter. His struggle also became more and more intense, and he unconsciously spat out dark red blood. Xiaobai was not the slightest bit bothered by the two men's fearful gazes. It was as cold as a grim reaper looking down on the common people. Its purple mechanical eyes appeared extremely demonic in the darkness. Crack! With two crisp sounds, Along and Ahu's struggling movements came to an abrupt halt. Then their bodies went limp and their heads drooped down powerlessly. Dark red blood flowed down and dripped onto the ground, emitting a cold sound. Xiao Bai indifferently turned around. Carrying the two limp men, he left Bu Fang's room. The door closed tightly, and the bloodstains on the ground also disappeared into thin air. Bu Fang sniffled and raised his hand in a daze. He picked his nose, smacked his lips, and continued to sleep. Bang, bang. Two corpses fell from the sky and fell onto the limestone floor of the alleyway. Fresh blood flowed out. Blackie raised its head with sleepy eyes and glanced at the two corpses. It wrinkled its nose and let out a snort. It opened its mouth and lightly exhaled. The two figures were blown out of the alleyway by a gust of wind and were thrown onto the main street. After doing all of this, Blackie contentedly lay back down and went back to sleep. Within King Yu's manor, the candlelight was gently swaying. An old and skinny figure wrapped in a black robe was profoundly staring at the flickering candlelight. His eyes were filled with two emerald spirit fires. Suddenly, the spirit fires in Han Qinyun's eyes dimmed, and the sound of something shattering rang out. A soft sigh came from his mouth. As expected, that store really can't be provoked. Along and Ahu died just like that. Two figures as silently appeared in front of Han Qinyun and respectfully saluted him. Along and Ahu are dead. Go to the alleyway and collect their corpses. We failed the assassination this time. I'll go apologize to King Yu right now. Han Qinyun walked out of the room while trembling with his body hunched. The two battle emperors from the Soul sect were in disbelief. They had already solemnly warned Along and Ahu before they took action. However, how long had it been? And the two of them were already dead. A fifth-grade battle king could not even struggle? The two of them looked at each other and could feel the fear in each other's eyes. Your Highness, the assassination this time has failed, Han Qinyun indifferently said to King Yu with his back hunched. King Yu was wearing a luxurious robe with his hair draped over his shoulders. He had a tranquil expression on his face. He gave Han Qinyun a glance, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. I understand. I will give your subordinates a proper burial. You may leave now, King Yu softly said. Han Qinyun's spirit fire slightly flickered. Without saying anything, he turned around and left. There was not the slightest pressure or aura coming from his body. He was like an ordinary old man with one foot in the grave. However, King Yu did not dare to underestimate him. Han Qinyun was the #1 expert in the Soul sect. He had a profound cultivation level and was an expert in the way of the soul. It was said that he had already stepped into the realm of 7th grade battle saint. However, there were also people who said that he was only at the peak of 6th grade battle emperor. As he watched Han Xinyun's figure disappear, King Yu's gaze gradually became playful. This old fox is truly ruthless. He actually used the lives of 2 battle kings to express his sincerity. Very well, then I will believe you for the time being. The corners of King Yu's mouth curled up in an extremely demonic manner. Fong Fong's little store? What kind of secret is this store that suddenly appeared? Compared to the Soul Sect, King Yu suddenly realized that he was even more curious about that store. The night passed peacefully. Early in the morning, as usual, Bu Fong woke up early. He first went to the kitchen and began his daily cutting technique training. He held a heavy kitchen knife and rapidly cut up a large radish. After he finished practicing his cutting technique, Bu Fong began to cook sweet and sour ribs as breakfast for Blackie, the lazy dog that was going to become a pig sooner or later. Fatty Jin's army of fatties arrived in a grandiose manner. Their faces were filled with eagerness. Bu Fong had been closed for the entire day yesterday, and they were extremely hungry. After getting used to the dishes of Bu Fong's store, the dishes of other restaurants were simply tasteless. Owner Bu, you're finally open. Oh, you have a new dish. Come, give me a portion of everything. Fatty Jean ordered the dishes with great familiarity. Bu Fong expressionlessly nodded. He walked toward the kitchen and began his daily business. Ouyang Xiaoi braved the cold wind and arrived at the store. She rubbed her hands together and took off her furry overcoat and hat, revealing her rosy little face. The interior of the store was heated automatically. It was quite warm and extremely comfortable. Bu Fong cooked while Xiaoi served the dishes. The coordination between the two of them was getting better and better. At the entrance of the alleyway, King Yu, who was dressed in a brocade robe, slowly walked in. He had an imposing appearance and an extraordinary temperament. He stepped into the store and indifferently sized it up. This was King Yu's first time at Bu Fong's store, so he was quite intrigued. In particular, the sky-high prices of the dishes on the menu made King Yu ponder. After ordering a jar of Ice Heart Jade Urn wine and a plate of sweet and sour ribs, King Yu began to savor the delicacies of Bu Fong's store. While he was at it, he was waiting for the crown prince to arrive. Chapter 77. Within the Celadon wine cup, the wine that was as clear as spring water gently swayed without any impurities. A rich wine fragrance spread out from the cup and enveloped one's nostrils, causing one to be intoxicated at all times. King Yu swirled the wine in the cup. The mellow fragrance and spiciness that entered his mouth caused all the pores on his body to tremble. This was the first time he had tasted such a delicious wine. It was much better than the bejeweled nectar wine in the Imperial Palace. As expected of a store that even my father personally came to visit. Just this wine alone is enough to make one forget to leave, King Yu lamented. This was his first time coming to Bu Fong's store. In the past, he had only heard rumors about it. Only after tasting it personally, this time, did he truly feel the charm of the store's delicacies. The wine was good and the dishes were good. The orange-red sweet and sour ribs, that dense steam accompanied by the fragrance of the meat, was simply like a beautiful painting, causing one to be involuntarily intoxicated. At the entrance of the alleyway, the crown prince, Ji Qinggan, was walking with his hands behind his back and his head held high. Beside him was only Shusher. With a solemn expression, Shusher was single-handedly carrying a huge metal cage as he walked toward Bu Fong's store. Bu Fong, who had just walked out of the kitchen, looked toward the entrance with a slightly puzzled expression. He saw the crown prince and Shusher walk into the store and immediately placed the metal cage on the ground. "Owner Bu, I'm here again," the crown prince said with a light smile as he looked at Bu Fong with a somewhat passionate gaze. If Bu Fong was able to cook the elixir cuisine, it should be able to delay the emperor's illness. The emperor would definitely look favorably upon him after he presented the elixir cuisine to him. This would allow him to stabilize his position as crown prince and obtain a greater competitive advantage. When he thought of all this, the Crown Prince's heart became even more passionate toward Bufong, who was able to cook the elixir cuisine. The Crown Prince raised his hand and grabbed the curtain. With a sudden tug, the metal cage was immediately revealed. A blood phoenix chicken with feathers that were as red as blood was quietly standing inside the metal cage with its eyes rolling around. Blood phoenix chicken? Bufong was slightly taken aback. Then, he looked at the Crown Prince with an odd expression. This guy actually went to such great lengths to catch a blood phoenix chicken. This was somewhat out of his expectations. That's right. Honorbu naturally recognizes this blood phoenix chicken. However, I wonder if Honorbu still remembers what he said before? The Crown Prince smiled. Bufong's face was expressionless as he circled around the steel cage and carefully sized up the blood phoenix chicken. In his heart, he could not help but compare this blood phoenix chicken with the one provided by the system. He discovered that this blood phoenix chicken was much inferior to the one provided by the system, whether it was in terms of vitality or size. The food ingredients provided by the system are all of high quality. After careful selection, they're all elites of various major varieties. The serious voice of the system rang in Bufong's mind. Bufong nodded. He believed that the system's products were of the highest quality. He had indeed promised the Crown Prince that if he could provide the ingredients, he would personally cook the sage herb phoenix chicken soup for him. What about the sage herb and the medicinal ingredients? Bufong simply asked. The Crown Prince's eyes immediately lit up. With a flick of his hand, a leather bag containing a huge pile of medicinal ingredients immediately appeared in his hand, and he handed it over to Bufong. The heavenly sage herb was framed in an exquisite wooden box and was carefully handed over to Bufong. The heavenly sage herb was very precious, and its value was no less than that of the blood phoenix chicken. Furthermore, it was extremely difficult to collect it because the heavenly sage herb only grew in the wildlands. That was an extremely terrifying place with countless high-grade spirit beasts. Even a 7th-grade battle saint would face the danger of dying there. However, the heavenly sage herb was only a 5th-grade spirit herb, and it grew in the outskirts of the wildlands. Therefore, the Crown Prince was able to collect it after spending a large sum of money. After taking the sage herb that did not look too good, Bufong nodded and simply said, "It will take a long time to cook the sage herb phoenix chicken soup. Today's opening hours are almost over. Come earlier tomorrow to collect the elixir cuisine. Because the ingredients for this elixir cuisine were provided by you, you're allowed to take it out." The smile on the Crown Prince's face froze. He was not going to cook it today? Was it because the opening hours were over? Honorbu, I really need this sage herb phoenix chicken soup right now. Can I cook it now? The Crown Prince asked with a frown. He had spent a large amount of his savings on these ingredients, and he wanted to personally watch Bufong cook it. Otherwise, he would not feel at ease. Bufong gave the Crown Prince a glance and said, "The elixir cuisine is not as simple as you think it is. It requires a lot of skills and concentration. If you don't believe me, you can go back and ask your imperial chef. To be honest, the quality of the ingredients you provided can only be said to be average. I really don't like them. However, I hate it when people doubt me. This is the first time, and I forgive you. If there's a next time, you can take your ingredients and go back," Bufong expressionlessly said as he looked straight at the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince, Ji Chingon, was furious. Who in the entire Light Wind Empire dared to speak to him like that, and even threaten him? You? The Crown Prince took a deep breath. When he thought of the store's background and recalled Bufong's culinary skills and miraculous elixir cuisine, the corners of his mouth curled up. He held back his anger and smiled. "I have never doubted Honorbu. All right, I will send someone to collect it tomorrow. I hope Honorbu won't disappoint me," the Crown Prince said. "Ha ha!" Just as the Crown Prince finished speaking, a burst of laughter came from not far away. The laughter was filled with ridicule and playfulness. The Crown Prince slightly frowned and looked toward that corner. He immediately saw King Yu, who was dressed in luxurious clothes. King Yu raised a cup of wine and drank it in one gulp. Then he stood up and walked toward the Crown Prince with a gentle smile on his face, as if he was a refined scholar. "My dear brother, I didn't expect to meet you here. TSK, TSK, TSK. Are you planning to let Owner Boo cook the elixir cuisine in order to prolong father's life? King Yu simply said with a smile on his face. The pupils of both the Crown Prince and Shusher constricted. Their attention was previously focused on Bu Fong, and they did not notice that King Yu was also within the store. How could he possibly be here? The Crown Prince's heart palpitated, and he was enraged. The Crown Prince suddenly gave Shusher a glance, and a profound look flashed through his eyes. Shusher's body slightly trembled as he fearfully took a step back and bowed toward the Crown Prince. Ha ha! Second brother, what a coincidence. It seems like second brother was also attracted by Owner Boo's delicacies. A smile appeared on the Crown Prince's face as he nodded toward King Yu. King Yu, Ji Qingyu, was at the peak of 5th grade Battle King and was only a step away from becoming a Battle Emperor. He was the one with the highest cultivation level among the 3 princes. Even though the Crown Prince, Ji Qingyu, and the 3rd Prince, Ji Qingxue, were both 5th grade Battle Kings, they had only just stepped into the realm and were still much weaker than King Yu. Indeed, Owner Boo's dishes are truly delicious, and the wine is also the best in the world. Big brother, if you have the chance, you should have a good taste. King Yu chuckled as he took out some crystals and placed them on the table before slowly walking out of the store. The smile on the Crown Prince's face gradually disappeared as he watched King Yu's figure disappear into the alleyway. His entire being became terrifyingly gloomy. With a high cultivation level and having more than half of the supporters in the imperial court, King Yu, Ji Qingyu, could be said to be his greatest competitor as the Crown Prince. He was also the younger brother that caused him to be unable to eat or sleep in peace. Owner Boo, can I really not cook it today? The Crown Prince unwillingly turned his gaze toward Bu Fong and asked. I can't. Bu Fong simply replied as he turned around and sat on a chair with an expressionless face. Also, the service fee for cooking this dish is 50 crystals. Remember to pay it. 50 crystals? The Crown Prince narrowed his eyes and placed the crystals on the table with a wave of his hand. Then he flicked his sleeves and left. He was the Crown Prince, and he did not lack money. Shusher let out a sigh as he frowned and followed the Crown Prince's footsteps. Very soon, the figures of the two of them also disappeared into the alleyway. All right, shall we? Today's business hours are over. Bu Fong stood up and patted Ouyang Xiaoi's head. After arranging for her to return, he turned around and grabbed the metal cage before walking into the kitchen. Chapter 78. With a dong sound, Bu Fong placed the metal cage in the kitchen. He stretched his body and lazily glanced at the blood phoenix chicken that was standing still in the cage. System, if the quality of this blood phoenix chicken is a little inferior, will it affect the efficacy of the elixir cuisine? Bu Fong puzzledly asked. If the quality of the ingredients is inferior, the efficacy of the elixir cuisine will naturally be inferior as well. This is common sense, the system solemnly said. Bu Fong was immediately speechless. He once again glanced at the blood phoenix chicken. It just so happened that the chicken had also turned its head around and was looking at Bu Fong with its rolling eyes. All right, this is the ingredient provided by the Crown Prince after all. I can't be blamed for the poor efficacy. Bu Fong indifferently thought about it and immediately felt at ease. After closing the store's door, Bu Fong did not immediately start cooking. Instead, he rested for a while and called out his system panel to check. Host, Bu Fong gender, male age, 20 true energy cultivation level, 3rd grade, has reached the level of releasing true energy. As the god of cooking in the fantasy world, the food in the future will definitely require true energy. Work hard, young man. Cooking talent, unknown skills. Level 1 meteor cutting technique, 80 out of 100 tools. Fragment of the God of Cooking set, 3/4, God of Cooking overall rating. Apprentice chef can finally cook ingredients with true energy and start learning cutting techniques. The road to the God of Cooking is open for you. Work hard, young man. Current origin crystal sales amount to 3,600 origin crystals. True chi conversion, 900/1000. System level, 3 stars. True energy conversion ratio, 25%. As his mind sank into the system panel, Buffon's expression remained unchanged. However, he was secretly excited. The sales volume had already reached 3,600 crystals. As long as he sold another 400 crystals, he would be able to complete the mission. The system would level up and his cultivation level would increase as well. 400 crystals was roughly equivalent to a day's worth of sales. Looks like I'll probably be able to level up after business ends tomorrow. I wonder what kind of special reward I'll get for leveling up to 4th Gray Battle Spirit. However, the collection of the God of Cooking sets should be complete by then, Buffon muttered. After resting for a while, he also stood up and walked toward the kitchen. Cooking the sage herb phoenix chicken soup required a lot of time and also required the use of true energy. Thus, Buffon did not dare to be careless in the slightest. He opened the door of the iron cage and directly grabbed the blood phoenix chicken out. This blood phoenix chicken was, after all, a 5th grade spirit beast. Even though it was restricted by the system within the store, it still had quite a bit of strength when it struggled. However, Buffon was an experienced chef after all. It was still very easy for him to deal with these ingredients. In just a short while, the blood phoenix chicken was completely prepared. After taking out the heavenly sage herb from the exquisite box and some of the medicinal ingredients he needed from the leather bag, Buffon started to prepare the elixir cuisine, the sage herb phoenix chicken soup. After King Yu returned to his manor, he was in a good mood. Perhaps it was because he had tasted the delicacies and wine. Ji Qingyu felt as if he was floating as he walked. I didn't expect the dishes of that store to be so delicious. That Ice Heart Jade urn wine is truly unforgettable. As he recalled the enchanting taste of the Ice Heart Jade urn wine, King Yu could not help but lick his lips as a hint of intoxication appeared in his eyes. It was another person who was captivated by Bu Fong's delicacies. King Yu suddenly regretted not going to Fong Fong's little store earlier. If he had, he would have been able to taste these delicacies earlier. Just as King Yu was thinking about the dishes cooked by Bu Fong, the head elder of the Soul Sect, Hun Qianyun, appeared in front of King Yu with his subordinates. These people were all wrapped in black robes and had a rather eerie and terrifying appearance. A hint of disgust flashed through his eyes, but on the surface, King Yu was still smiling as he looked at them. I wonder if King Yu gained anything from that mysterious store? Hun Qianyun's hoarse voice rang out. It was as if his voice was rubbing against gravel, causing one's hair to stand on end. That elder brother of mine has already gathered the blood phoenix chicken. He brought the precious medicinal ingredients and blood phoenix chicken to the store and asked the owner to cook the elixir cuisine. However, the elixir cuisine can only be completed tomorrow, King Yu simply said. Oh, it can only be completed tomorrow? Hun Qianyun narrowed his eyes, and his spirit fire flickered as if he was in deep thought. King Yu nodded and said, the elixir cuisine isn't an ordinary dish after all. Even the owner of that mysterious store would have to spend some effort to cook it. However, this is good news for us. King Yu, do you mean that I need to bring some people with me to destroy the soup tomorrow? Hun Qianyun doubtfully asked. That's right, it must be destroyed. Father is old and frail, with hidden injuries all over his body. Forcefully extending his lifespan will only make him suffer even more. As a son, how can I hope to see my father suffering? King Yu simply said. Then his gaze fell on Hun Qianyun, and he said, arrange for some people to bring along the experts from my manor and set up an ambush at the entrance of the alleyway tomorrow. Remember, you must destroy that sage herb phoenix chicken soup. If you fail this time, then you can leave with your people. Hun Qianyun indifferently stood in the distance. When he heard King Yu's words, the spirit fire in his eyes suddenly trembled. Then he cupped his hands and retreated. As King Yu watched Hun Qianyun's disappearing figure, the corner of his mouth twitched. Then he lightly shouted toward the distance, prepare a horse for me. I want to enter the palace. The Crown Prince's palace on the left side of the gate of heavenly mystery. The Crown Prince, Ji Qinggan, was sitting on a high seat with a gloomy expression. He was looking down at Xu Shi, who was kneeling on the ground. The corner of his mouth was slightly twitching, showing the anger he was suppressing. Shusher was also feeling a little fearful and helpless. He knew that the Crown Prince had already begun to suspect him ever since King Yu found out that they were going to Fong Fong's little store. Shusher, can you explain to me why King Yu would appear in that store? The Crown Prince simply asked. I don't know. Shusher's face stiffened. I just told you yesterday to keep the news a secret. Then, I ran into King Yu as soon as I arrived at the store. Could it be that all of this is a coincidence? The Crown Prince chuckled. Your Highness, do you not trust me? Shusher raised his head and solemnly looked at the Crown Prince. I have been following your Highness for several years. How could your Highness not understand what I am doing? Shusher's tone was a little indignant and dispirited. Ji Qinggan was slightly startled. When he saw Shusher's dispirited appearance, his ice-cold expression also softened. He believed that Shusher would not betray him. The reason he suspected Shusher today was because he was provoked by King Yu's gaze before he left. He was a dignified crown prince. Why should he be bullied by a duke? All right, I was also blinded by anger. Shusher, I'm naturally aware of your loyalty. Go and make arrangements for the experts. Since King Yu already knows that we asked Owner Bu to cook the sage herb phoenix chicken soup, the road to obtain the soup tomorrow will definitely not be safe. Find more experts with at least a 5th grade battle king. Yes, your Highness. I will take my leave first. Shusher solemnly nodded and left with his hands cupped together. However, after a while, Shusher, who had just left the Crown Prince's palace, hurriedly returned with an anxious expression on his face. Your Highness, I just received news that King Yu entered the palace to meet His Majesty. The Crown Prince's eyebrows immediately twitched and a cold glint appeared in his eyes. He inwardly cursed Shusher for being despicable and also hurriedly changed his clothes before heading to the main hall to meet the Emperor. Night fell. 2 crescent moons hung high in the sky and black clouds lingered around them. At the entrance of the alleyway, where Fong Fong's little store was located, one figure after another suddenly descended. These people were all wearing black, nocturnal clothes. The aura on their bodies was surging, and their true energy was surging. We can't afford to make any mistakes in tomorrow's operation. We must finish setting up the magic array today. Among the figures, a stooped figure appeared. 2 gloomy spirit fires were burning in the night as his hoarse voice echoed in the air. Chapter 79. Imperial Palace, Main Hall. The Crown Prince was wearing a luxurious robe as he hurriedly entered. Inside the main hall, the Emperor was lazily sitting with one hand supporting his chin. His body would lightly tremble from time to time, and faint coughs could be heard coming from his mouth. Qinggan, you're here. I heard from your second brother that you went to Owner Bu's place to prepare the elixir cuisine for me. The Emperor softly said with a smile on his face when he saw the Crown Prince step into the main hall. Ji Qinggan's expression slightly changed when he heard this. However, he still respectfully bowed toward the Emperor and said, Father, I was just worried about your health. I heard that Owner Bu's elixir cuisine has the effect of prolonging one's lifespan, so I specially sent someone to the wilderness to purchase a blood phoenix chicken for Owner Bu to cook the elixir cuisine. King Yu, Ji Qingyu, was also in the main hall. He was standing far away with a smile on his face as he looked at the Crown Prince with interest. He had purposely come to the Imperial Palace to tell his father about this matter. Ji Qinggan wanted to hide it from his father. When the time came, and he suddenly presented the elixir cuisine that could prolong one's lifespan, his father would definitely look at him in a different light. However, now that he had already told his father about this, there was less anticipation and the impact of the shock would not be as strong. Furthermore, the most important point was that since his imperial father already knew about the elixir cuisine, there would definitely be a glimmer of hope in his heart. Once the elixir cuisine was destroyed, this glimmer of hope would also be crushed. When that time came, his imperial father would definitely not give the Crown Prince any face. King Yu's eyes flickered as he looked at the Crown Prince with a bright smile. The Crown Prince had already cursed King Yu countless times in his heart. How could he not know what King Yu was thinking? The reason he hid it from the emperor back then was to make the emperor look at him in a different light. Now that it had been messed up, the effect was greatly reduced. Thank you, my son. I know my father's condition very well, but I appreciate your kindness. The emperor lightly smiled, and a rare trace of kindness appeared on his face. The crown prince bitterly smiled in his heart. Now he could only hope that Shusher could safely deliver the elixir cuisine to the imperial palace. However, he knew that King Yu would definitely not let everything go so smoothly. Bufong frowned slightly and covered the lid of the clay pot with his palm. True qi kept gushing out of his body and flowing into the clay pot, constantly affecting the dishes inside. Bufong didn't use much true energy cooking, so he didn't dare to be careless in the slightest, for fear that a mistake would ruin the dish. Beads of sweat had appeared on Bufong's forehead, but he did not care about it. He was wholeheartedly focused on the true energy cooking. Finally, there was a slight change in his expression and the corners of his mouth slightly curled up. After dispersing the true qi, Bufong retracted his hand and exhaled a long breath. He picked up a cup of water on the table and took a sip. This water was cold and sweet. It was mountain spring water provided by the system and was filled with spirit energy. It had a nourishing effect on the body. When he opened the lid of the clay pot, he saw the blood phoenix chicken quietly lying inside. The steam was slightly agitated, causing the jelly-like meat to lightly tremble. The color of the chicken soup was orange-red, but it wasn't as bright as the one Bufong cooked for Xiao Yinyu. This was the reason for the poor quality of the ingredients. Even Bufong couldn't do anything about it. The essence of the sage herb and other medicinal ingredients had seeped into the chicken meat and chicken soup, causing a rich fragrance to billow out. The sage herb phoenix chicken soup was finished. Bufong covered the clay pot again, stretched his back, and cracked his neck. He walked into the store and opened the door. The cold winter air blew into his face, making him feel refreshed after a night of exhaustion. He was also a little more spirited. As usual, the store opened for business. Bufong placed the sweet and sour ribs in front of Blackie and stroked its smooth and clean fur. Then Bufong stood up, pulled out a chair, and contentedly curled up on it. He wanted to take a short break. However, this break did not last for too long. Fatty Jean and his army of fatties surged over, and Bufong had no choice but to start his busy day. On the main street of the imperial city, Shusher was leading a group of people toward Bufong's store with a solemn expression. The aura on their bodies was extremely powerful, and the fluctuations of their true qi were almost distorting the air. Shusher did not dare to be careless in the slightest in this operation to protect the soup. The crown prince was already somewhat dissatisfied with him. If he messed up this matter again, he would be kicked out of the crown prince's office. Therefore, he specially brought 5 battle kings with him to protect the soup in order to ensure that nothing went wrong. After all, 5 battle kings could already be considered as the top fighting force in the imperial city. The entrance of the alleyway was quiet and peaceful. Shusher stepped into it with his group. Just as he stepped into the alleyway, his eyebrows immediately furrowed, as if he sensed a chilling aura rising from under his feet. Could it be a misconception? Shusher lowered his head and glanced at the floor. It was still the same old bluestone slabs. Green moss was still emerging from between the cracks of the bluestone slabs. Everything was the same as usual. Perhaps it was a misconception. Shusher shook his head and bitterly smiled. Then, he led the group of people into Bufong's store. Within the store, there were a few scattered customers enjoying the dishes. These people were all rich and influential people in the imperial city. Just like Fatty Jean, they did not lack money. "Oh, you're here." Bufong expressionlessly nodded when he saw Shusher striding into the store. "Wait a moment. Wait for the smelly boss to finish cooking this dish," Ouyang Xiaoi charmingly said as she signaled Shusher to wait. Shusher was also a little nervous as he unhurriedly nodded. After a while, Bufong finished cooking the last dish. After asking Xiaoi to serve it to the customers, he personally carried a clay pot out of the kitchen. The clay pot was still steaming, and a rich aroma was wafting in the air. Shusher's eyes immediately lit up. This was Owner Boo's elixir cuisine. Shusher carefully received the clay pot from Bu Fong and solemnly expressed his gratitude. Then, he bid farewell to Bu Fong and turned around to walk out of the store. The 5 battle kings behind him also followed with solemn expressions. From the moment he received the elixir cuisine, Shusher's entire heart tensed up, and he became extremely vigilant. Berserk true energy surged out from the bodies of each battle king and lingered in the surroundings, guarding Shusher. Blackie, who was lying at the entrance, lazily raised its doggy eyes and glanced at the group of people. It snorted and continued to lie there. A gust of cold wind suddenly blew into the alleyway. It was even colder than a bone-chilling wind. Shusher and the others, who were carrying the elixir cuisine, had just stepped into the alleyway when all 6 of them simultaneously felt their hair stand on end. Their eyes instantly widened and emitted a sharp light as they scanned their surroundings. "Who's there? Show yourself!" With a loud shout, a Battle King expert ruthlessly smashed his fist in a certain direction with true energy surging around it. Buzz! The Battle King's pupils abruptly constricted when the punch that was filled with true energy collided with the air. Then, he discovered that the entire alleyway was emitting a black brilliance. 2 black runic wheels that were rotating in the opposite direction actually appeared on the simple bluestone floor. Crap! This is the soul sex killing array, the Hades soul rending array. Shusher's complexion instantly turned pale, and the light in his eyes seemed to have faded away. The black brilliance suddenly rose up and enveloped the group of people within it, as if it was pulling them into another world. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Figures wrapped in black robes appeared around the alleyway. The auras of these figures were extremely powerful, and the aura of the hunchbacked old man who was leading them was even more terrifying. With 2 balls of spirit fire pulsating, Hun Qinyun indifferently said, "The prey has entered the array. Begin killing." Chapter 80. Boom Boom. The black gas was like a black fog that rose from the ground. In an instant, it enveloped the entire array. A frightening and austere aura filled the alleyway. The 5 battle kings surrounded Shusher, who was carrying the sage herb phoenix chicken soup, with grave expressions. Their mission this time was to protect the elixir cuisine, so they had to focus all of their attention on protecting Shusher, who was carrying the elixir cuisine. Under the guidance of the 2 reverse rotating black wheel formations, the black gas that filled the sky gradually formed a gigantic phantom above them. This phantom brought with it an extremely terrifying aura. This is the Hades soul rending array. It's the soul sex secret array. Why would this array appear here? Shusher's eyes were filled with disbelief. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. His pupils abruptly constricted as he looked into the distance. There, figures wrapped in black robes appeared one after another. Members of the Soul Sect, are you guys here to destroy the elixir cuisine? Shusher sternly shouted. Let's do it. Don't waste time talking to him. Remember, don't leave anyone alive. Our identities cannot be revealed. A hoarse voice rang out. It was as ear-piercing as the grinding of gravel. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The figures wrapped in black robes did not say anything. One after another, they shot out and stood at the corner of each formation, completely surrounding Shusher and the others within the formation. Hun Qinyun, whose eyes seemed to have 2 balls of spirit fire pulsating within them, slowly walked out with his hunched back. At this moment, Shusher's heart had already completely sunk to the bottom. No matter how careful he was, he still fell for King Yu's trap. Shusher had always thought that no matter how crazy King Yu was, he would at most send a few powerful assassins to destroy the elixir cuisine. However, he never expected that King Yu would actually collude with experts from the sects. The reason the experts from the sects were able to resist the imperial court for so many years was because of their mysterious methods and resources. They were able to forcefully endure Emperor Chongfeng's continuous attacks year after year. The sects were not to be trifled with. They were very powerful, and any cultivator from the Empire knew this very well. Formations were precisely one of the methods these sects were proficient in. King Yu actually dared to collude with experts from the sects. Isn't he afraid of His Majesty finding out? Shusher angrily roared as he clenched his teeth. Hun Xinyan let out a soft cry of surprise. His gaze fell on Shusher as he laughed with a hoarse voice. How would the Emperor know? If I kill you, neither the heavens nor the earth will know. Shusher still wanted to say something, but the experts from the other sects did not want to waste any more time with him. They immediately activated their true energy, and the black shadow above Shusher and the others slammed down on them. A huge palm, made entirely of black chi, slammed toward Shusher. The energy fluctuations were extremely intense. Block it! Shusher's eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he roared. One of the Battle Kings let out a long roar, and the true energy around his body almost solidified. His entire body rose from the ground and blasted out a full-powered attack at the incoming palm. However, this powerful Battle Monarch attack was like a mayfly trying to shake a tree. It did not cause any damage to the palm at all. Bang! With a loud bang, the Battle King was ruthlessly slammed into the ground, causing the ground to violently tremble and crack open. All the true energy in the Battle King's body dissipated, and he was actually smashed to death by a single palm strike. Shusher's heart suddenly turned cold. The might of this magic array was indeed incomparably powerful. Hun Xinyan faintly smiled. He stretched out his withered finger and suddenly pointed at Shusher as he coldly said, "They must all die." The Crown Prince was sitting cross-legged in the Crown Prince's palace with his eyes closed. He wanted to calm down and cultivate in peace. However, after cultivating for a while, he still helplessly opened his eyes and let out a long sigh. Phew! I wonder how Shusher is doing. My eyelids have been twitching, and I keep having a bad feeling about this. The Crown Prince frowned as he stood up and looked outside the window. He originally thought it would be a clever move to have Owner Boo cook a portion of sage herb phoenix chicken soup for his father. However, he did not expect that King Yu would use some tricks to turn it into a rotten trick to trap him. The Crown Prince was also a bit helpless and could not help but feel a bit regretful. Right now, he was in a dilemma. He could only hope that Shusher would be able to safely bring back the sage herb phoenix chicken soup. Only then would he not shoot himself in the foot. King Yu's manner. King Yu held a handful of crystal powder in his hand as he stood in front of the fish pond and contentedly fed the fishes. As he watched the fishes in the pond fight each other for the crystal powder, the smile on his face became colder and colder. A slight sense of oppression caused Bufong, who was curled up on the chair, to slightly frown. He stood up from the chair, walked to the door, and looked toward the entrance of the alleyway. He saw a gigantic humanoid silhouette blocking the entrance of the alleyway. What are they doing over there? Don't they know that this will hinder my business? Bufong frowned and was somewhat unhappy. The store was already located in a remote area, yet this group of people just had to cause trouble at the entrance of the alleyway. Were they deliberately making things difficult for him, Bufong? Ouyang Xiaoi also curiously stuck her head out and looked at the towering and majestic silhouette. Her flushed face was filled with shock. Smelly boss, what are they doing? Xiaoi curiously asked. They're up to something, Bufong lightly said as he patted Xiaoi's head. Just as he finished speaking, his eyes narrowed. The gigantic silhouette suddenly exploded, and a figure shot out like a cannonball toward the direction of the store. Owner Boo, save me. A heart-wrenching cry rang out. Shusher was running over in a sorry state, with blood dripping from his entire body. One of his arms was completely shattered, and blood was continuously dripping down from his body as he ran. However, his other hand was tightly hugging onto the scalding clay pot. Bang! Shusher was completely exhausted by the time he arrived in front of Bufong. He was kneeling on the ground with blood spurting out of his mouth and bleeding from his arm. He was trembling as he hugged onto the clay pot and did not let a single drop of chicken soup spill out. Ouyang Xiaoi was so frightened by Shusher's miserable state that her face turned pale. She quickly hid behind Bufong and timidly looked around. Bu Fong frowned as he looked at the silhouette that was slowly moving toward the alleyway. He then looked at Shusher, who was kneeling on the ground and covered in blood. For some reason, a wave of anger suddenly emerged in his heart. You actually dare to beat up my customer to this state. This is a blatant provocation to Fong Fong's little store. Bu Fong expressionlessly said, but his voice was extremely cold. Bu, Owner Bu, the Sage Herb Phoenix chicken soup cannot be destroyed. Shusher tremblingly handed over the scalding clay pot to Bu Fong with a trace of pleading and helplessness in his eyes. A wave of black energy suddenly gushed out from his body and instantly covered Shusher's skin. Black smoke was rising from his 7 orifices. Bu Fong's pupils constricted. He could feel the trace of pleading in Shusher's eyes and could not help but want to take the Sage Herb Phoenix chicken soup. However, a black spear suddenly shot toward them at a speed that almost surpassed the speed of sound and directly pierced through the clay pot. With a clang, the clay pot shattered. At that moment, time seemed to have stopped in front of Bu Fong and Shusher. After the spear pierced through the clay pot, its momentum did not decrease at all. It actually directly smashed toward Blackie, who was lying on the ground, and then pierced into the head of Blackie, who was sleeping soundly. With a bang, the long spear collapsed, and Blackie opened its drowsy eyes. Damn it! Who used an embroidery needle to stab you, Lord Go? Stand up for the Lord Go. Blackie suspiciously looked around. Then its eyes locked onto the silhouette in the distance. Shusher blankly stared at the clay pot shattering. The Sage Herb Phoenix chicken soup spilled all over the ground, and the sparkling, jelly-like chicken meat rolled on the ground. After letting out a long sigh, Shusher hopelessly closed his eyes. Smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. His entire soul had been completely incinerated. You must be the owner of this mysterious store. A figure wrapped in a black robe walked over. Behind him was the silhouette of Hades, which was controlled by a gigantic magic array. You were the one who killed him? You were the one who destroyed the soup? With an expressionless face, Bu Fong coldly turned his head around and looked at the black-robed figure. Han Xinyun's soul flame-like eyes lightly flickered. With a hoarse voice, he lightly laughed. Everyone says that this store of yours is incomparably mysterious. Even Xiao Meng, a 7th-grade battle saint, was forced to retreat. The power of my Hades soul-rending array is not inferior to that of a 7th-grade battle saint. I would like to test the limits of your store, to pay tribute to my 2 little fellows who died. Bu Fong knitted his eyebrows. He glanced at Han Xinyun and coldly said, I'm asking you if you were the one who killed him, and if you were the one who destroyed the soup. You only need to answer yes or no. Reckless fool, you still dare to be so arrogant in front of my Hades soul-rending array. So what if I was the one who killed him and destroyed the soup? Han Xinyun was also a little angry. True energy suddenly gushed out from his body, causing the Hades to become a little more corporeal. Blackie lazily crawled up from the ground and glanced at the silhouette of Hades. It rolled its eyes and rolled its eyes. Even if Hades really crawled out from the netherworld, this Lord Go is not afraid. What are you pretending to be, a counterfeit? A gentle and pleasant male voice immediately came out from Blackie's mouth and lingered in the alleyway. Chapter 81. Who? Just who is it? When Han Xinyun heard this extremely arrogant voice, the spirit fire in his eye sockets abruptly flared up, and the aura on his body became even more terrifying. He scanned his surroundings in an attempt to find the person who spoke. However, he did not find anyone who had the confidence to speak. The customers in the store cowered in fear after being glared at by him. That mysterious person was definitely not among the customers. Bu Fong frowned with a calm expression. The chicken soup that was scattered all over the ground was emitting steam. The steam naturally dissipated when it was blown by the cold wind, accompanied by the rich fragrance of the chicken soup. Sensing killing intent toward the host. Activating protection mode. A mechanical voice rang out as a gigantic white figure rapidly rushed out from the store and landed beside Bu Fong with a loud bang. Xiao Bai stood ramrod straight as its mechanical eyes emitted a red glow. A puppet. Han Qinyan could not find the person who spoke, so he gave up on searching. His gaze landed on Xiao Bai, who had appeared beside Bu Fong, and he was slightly astonished. Even though Han Qinyan had heard of the achievements of this mysterious store, he had never seriously investigated it. He only knew that this store was very powerful and was able to force back the 7th grade battle Saint Xiaoming. However, he did not know exactly how powerful it was. Looking at it now, could it be because of this puppet? The big black dog slowly walked over with cat-like steps. When it discovered that Xiao Bai had appeared beside Bu Fong, it rolled its eyes and stopped moving forward. Killing my customers and destroying my dishes. This is simply unforgivable. Bu Fong took a deep breath. His gaze became focused and became a little cold. Oomph. You sure talk big. Today, I want to see just how capable this store of yours is. Han Qinyan sneered and took a step back. With a wave of his withered arm, the gigantic Hades phantom behind him immediately moved. The black mist rolled, and the phantom raised its hand. Then, a black spear appeared once again. The black mist lingered around the spear, and the energy fluctuations surged violently. With a sudden, tearing sound, the virtual shadow of Hades threw out the spear with all its might. The spear whizzed toward Bu Fong's position, and the air seemed to be torn apart. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flickered, and in a flash, he appeared in front of Bu Fong. He raised his huge mechanical arm and smashed it toward the black spear that was piercing through him. Boom! A huge explosion rang out as gales whizzed out in an instant. The entire alleyway seemed to be enveloped by a black fog, and in an instant, it was completely submerged. The customers inside Bu Fong's store were all startled by the terrifying sound. However, what surprised them was that the black fog did not surge into the store as if it was separated by a layer of protective film. Han Qinyan sneered as he looked into the distance. Even a 7th grade battle saint would suffer quite a bit from the might of the Nether King's Void Spear. A mere puppet. Could it be that it could defy the heavens? Boom! Within the black fog, 2 red rays of light blossomed. Then, the red rays of light turned into an ice-cold purple color. A gust of gales whizzed out and completely dispersed the black fog. When the black fog was completely dispersed, the scene in the scene was revealed. After Han Qinyan saw it, his spirit fire's pupils violently twitched, and he was extremely shocked. Xiao Bai's entire body glowed with a metallic luster, and its mechanical eyes turned into an ice-cold purple color. Its arms were stretched out in front of its body, and it seemed to have blocked Hades' void spear. There was not even the slightest trace of a spear on its body. Bu Fong indifferently stood behind Xiao Bai as he expressionlessly looked at Han Qinyan. There was not the slightest trace of worry or fear on his face. Battle mode activated. Xiao Bai's mechanical voice became even colder, and its purple eyes seemed to contain a monstrous, killing intent. The purple-eyed Xiao Bai's figure let out a buzzing sound, and it instantly shot forward. Its speed was so fast that it was difficult for the naked eye to follow. A suffocating pressure suddenly pressed toward Han Qinyan. Han Qinyan angrily snorted. He stretched out his withered palm and borrowed the power of Hades' silhouette behind him to guide the black fog to wrap around his body. Then he swung his palm toward Xiao Bai. As the two collided, a violent energy wave poured out. The walls in the alleyway suddenly cracked, as if they were about to collapse from the impact of the energy wave. Han Qinyan's expression changed. If they continued to fight with such power, it would definitely attract the attention of the Imperial City's patrols and experts. He had to end the battle as soon as possible. All of you, kill the owner of the store. I'll hold off this puppet. As a veteran, Han Qinyan naturally understood the principle of capturing the ringleader first. This puppet was obviously there to protect Bu Fong. As long as Bu Fong was killed, the puppet would lose its target and stop functioning. The 6 Battle King experts wrapped in black robes behind Hun Qinyun also understood what he meant. They controlled the Hades silhouette to press toward Bufang, one step at a time. As the gigantic Hades silhouette moved in the alleyway, it seemed as if it was about to burst through the alleyway. Bufang indifferently looked at the approaching Hades silhouette. He patted Ouyang Xiaoyi's head and told her to hide inside the store. With the store's protection, she should be safe. Is this kid courting death? Why isn't he running away when faced with the Hades silhouette we're controlling? One of the Battle Kings controlling the magic array said in astonishment. He must be so scared that his legs have gone soft, and he doesn't have the strength to run away. Once the Hades soul-rending array is activated, its power is comparable to a 7th grade battle saint. Another Battle King sneered. Why isn't that kid pissing his pants? How can a 3rd grade trash like him resist the pressure of a 7th grade battle saint? Bufang paid no heed to the Battle King's mocking words. The so-called pressure of 7th grade battle saint was practically non-existent to him. Due to the existence of a system, he was completely unaffected by the pressure. Furthermore, he was not worried about his own safety in the slightest. Blackie slowly walked out with cat-like steps. It gracefully and nobly walked between Bufang and the Hades silhouette. Blackie raised its head and blinked its doggy eyes at the enormous Hades silhouette formed by the black gas. A hint of disdain flashed across its eyes. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Where did this big black dog come from? Get lost. A Battle King speechlessly looked at the big black dog squatting between Bufang and them. His mind was filled with black lines as he hurriedly chased it away. This big black dog did not have the slightest trace of spirit energy on its body. Its appearance was so ordinary that it was no different from the big black dog next door. It was no wonder that the Battle Kings could not recognize it. Idiot, are you talking to me, the Lord Go? Blackie arrogantly raised its doggy head. Its gentle, manly voice carried a hint of mockery as it resounded. The 6 Battle Kings were instantly stunned. Their thoughts were in a mess for a moment. Holy sh**t. This was a freaking talking dog. Idiot, do you dare to tell the Lord Go to get lost? Are you tired of living? Are you trying to provoke the Lord Go with a knockoff Hades? The big black dog continued. This big black dog that had become a spirit was so arrogant. The 6 Battle Kings were instantly enraged. A dog dared to act tough in front of them. This was simply too much. Damn dog. If I don't chop you into pieces and cook you into a hot pot today, I'll change my surname to yours. One of the Battle Kings with a fiery temper could not hold it in any longer. He angrily shouted and controlled the Hades silhouette to form a black spear. The spear tore through the air and pierced through the small black hole. This knockoff dares to call itself the Hades Void Spear? It's as powerful as an embroidery needle. It's not even enough to scratch an itch for the Lord Go, Blackie said indifferently as he rolled his eyes. The black spear ruthlessly struck Blackie's head. Blackie's dog ears slightly flapped, and the spear instantly broke into pieces, turning into black smoke that filled the sky and dissipating. The 6 Battle Kings' bodies froze. What just happened? Their eyes were blurred, and they couldn't see clearly. Although it's not that damned old man from the netherworld, this Lord Go still hates this guy. He discussed this Lord Go while he sleeps, so all of you, go to hell, Blackie said indifferently. Blackie said indifferently. Then it stretched out a cute and exquisite dog paw and slowly patted the Nether King's phantom. Bufang's eyes slightly twitched. In his line of sight, the dog paw that Blackie had stretched out expanded in the blink of an eye, turning into a dog paw that covered the sky. Blackie glanced at the Hades silhouette under the dog paw and disdainfully snorted. Then his dog paw lightly slapped down. Chapter 82. There was no earth-shattering explosion, nor was there a raging storm. Under Blackie's paw, the Hades silhouette was instantly shattered inch by inch and silently dissipated. The 6 Battle Kings felt as if their minds were about to shatter the moment Blackie made his move. Under that terrifying pressure, They simply could not muster up the slightest courage to resist. A harmless big black dog had turned into a life-reaping king of hell in the blink of an eye. This change almost caused the 6 Battle Kings to collapse. The reverse magic array made a cracking sound and was covered in cracks. Then it suddenly shattered. The 6 Battle Kings spat out blood and knelt on the ground. They wanted to escape, but their bodies were so stiff that they would not listen to their commands. Poochie! Black's paw slammed onto the ground, causing it to slightly tremble. It was as if the sound of bones being crushed could be heard. In the distance, Han Qianyun was so frightened that his soul almost flew out of his body. What the heck? So the most terrifying thing about this store is not the purple-eyed puppet, but the big black dog lying at the entrance. Just what is the origin of this store? To be able to shatter Hades's soul-rending array with a single paw and kill 5 Battle Kings. Just what kind of cultivation level does this big black dog have? Could it be a supreme 9th grade spirit beast? A supreme 9th grade spirit beast guarding the entrance? Are you Asterisk King kidding me? Han Qianyun felt so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. He could not help but feel a little regretful. His brain must have been caught in the door to have continued to cause trouble for this store. Originally, he had already completed his mission, yet he actually wanted to ruin this store as well. Now, he had gone for wool and come home shorn. Instead, he had lost 6 Battle Kings. Oh, he might even have to die here. Black's doggy paw gradually recovered and became small and dainty again. It shook its doggy paw in disgust and glanced at Han Qianyun. It rolled its doggy eyes and returned to the entrance with cat-like steps. It lay down and slept soundly. Bu Fong seemed to already know Black's temperament. It was not the first time this lazy dog went to sleep after acting cool. Ouyang Xiaoyi stood inside the store and held onto the doorframe. Her large eyes were sparkling as she stared at Blackie with a glimmer of admiration. Blackie is so powerful. Do you really want to know what breed of dog it is? Blackie's squinted eyes twitched and slightly opened. When it saw Ouyang Xiaoyi's glowing eyes, it immediately snorted and turned its head away. Don't keep staring at the Lord Go. The Lord Go isn't interested in little human girls. Woof. Bu Fong expressionlessly walked a few steps and came to the big pit that was created by Little Black. A huge dog paw print appeared, and a faint black gas rose from it. In that huge pit, the bodies of the 6 battle monarchs had already been smashed into minced meat, and they couldn't be more dead. In the distance, the strength of Han Qianyun, who had lost the support of Hades' soul-rending formation, immediately dropped below the level of a 7th grade battle saint. He was no match for purple-eyed Xiaobai at all. He was struck by a punch, and his entire body was fiercely smashed into the wall of the alleyway, sinking deep into it. Xiaobai's purple eyes flickered as he walked toward Han Qianyun with an ice-cold, killing intent. Suddenly, a huge ball of spirit fire rose up from the ruins. It carried a figure as it sped out and disappeared into the distance in an instant. It turned out that Han Qianyun knew that there was nothing he could do to reverse the situation, so he clenched his teeth and used the sect's secret technique to escape. The price of using this secret technique was extremely huge, and he only used it as a last resort. Otherwise, he would have been beaten to death by purple-eyed Xiaobai. After his target disappeared, Xiaobai was stunned for a few seconds. He raised his mechanical arm and scratched his bald head. Then, the purple in his eyes faded and turned red once again. As he gazed at the messy alleyway, the corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. It seemed like he would have to ask the Crown Prince to send someone to repair this alleyway when he arrived. Otherwise, he would not be able to continue his business. Shusher's corpse had already turned into a mummy. His soul had been completely burned away, and the skin on his body had also shrunk due to dehydration. As he lightly sighed, Bu Fong also felt a little helpless. He did not know what to say and could only wait for the Crown Prince to resolve the issue himself. When the customers in the store saw that the battle seemed to have ended, they all bid farewell to Bu Fong and hurriedly left. In the end, only Bu Fong and Ouyang Xiaoyi were left in the store. Not long after, the Imperial City's patrol team arrived one after another. Xiaoming also arrived with a gloomy expression and landed in the alleyway that was filled with ruins. The battle seemed to be a little desperate. Xiaoming looked down from the sky and saw the huge dog paw print. His pupils slightly constricted as he fearfully glanced at Blackie, who was lying at the entrance. When he saw Shusher's corpse, he was slightly startled and helplessly sighed. He sent someone to the Crown Prince's palace to inform the Crown Prince, and then began to clean up the battlefield. That dogpaw was really domineering. It directly turned 6 battle kings into mincemeat. I can't even confirm their identities anymore. Xiaoming did not know whether to laugh or cry. When he saw Shusher's corpse and the sage herb phoenix chicken soup that was splattered all over the ground, Xiaoming roughly guessed what happened. Then, his gaze became somewhat cold. The way Shusher died should be due to the soul sex methods. Could it be that the battle between the Crown Prince and King Yu involved the sex? This is not a good thing. Xiaoming murmured softly. After a long while, the Crown Prince finally hurriedly arrived with his subordinates. When he saw the chicken soup that was splattered all over the ground and the corpse of Shusher, he could not hide the sorrow on his face. He clenched his teeth, and the muscles on his face were trembling. He silently took away Shusher's corpse and promised Bufang that he would repair the damaged alleyway. Then, the majority of his troops left one after another. The alleyway once again became low-key. Of course, that was if one did not look at the shattered limestone and the huge dogpaw print that was scattered all over the ground. When Ouyang Xiaoi left the store and returned to the Ouyang mansion, Bufang also closed the store. The store's business hours for the day had ended. Just as he closed the store, the system's solemn and earnest voice sounded out in his mind. Congratulations to the host for achieving a turnover of 4,000 crystals and completing the short-term target. You will soon receive the system's reward. The system's reward is being released. Bufang was startled for a moment. Then, the corners of his mouth slightly curled up and a smile appeared on his stiff face. He finally leveled up. It was not easy for him to spend so much time on a turnover of 4,000 crystals. However, no matter what, he managed to endure it. After completing the turnover, he would be able to level up and obtain strength. Even though his combat ability was very weak, at least his true energy level would catch up. That was enough. Young man, congratulations on completing the short-term target in order to become the god of cooking who stands at the top of the food chain in this fantasy world. You have taken another solid step toward becoming the god of cooking. Reward: red braised meat recipe, Big Dipper carving technique training technique, 1 fragment of the god of cooking set. Congratulations to the host for collecting all 4 fragments of the god of cooking set. You will randomly draw an accessory from the god of cooking set. Random drawing beginning, drawing in progress. Drawing complete. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Golden Dragon Bone Kitchen Knife, God of Cooking set. The series of words from the system made Bufang feel a little overwhelmed. However, when he calmed down and sorted out the information, he quickly understood everything. Is the dish I obtained this time the red braised meat? When Bufang heard the system mention this term, he could not help but lick his lips. In his mind, the image of the steaming hot, rosy meat in a small clay pot appeared. The glistening oil made him unable to resist the urge to eat. Red braised meat was his favorite. The appearance of the carving technique also brought an unexpected surprise to Bufang. Bufang was extremely weak in the area of carving technique. Now, he could properly make up for this shortcoming. However, what surprised Bufang the most was the God of Cooking set that he had been looking forward to for a long time. Golden Dragon Bone Kitchen Knife. A kitchen knife made from dragon bones? What a domineering name. Chapter 83. Host. Bufang True Energy Cultivation Level, 4th grade, has already reached the level of true energy into the spirit. As the god of cooking of the fantasy world, use your true energy into the spirit to reform the ingredients. Young man, work hard. Cooking talent. Unlock skills. Level 1 meteor cutting technique. 90 out of 100, level 1 Big Dipper carving technique, 0 out of 100 tools, Golden Dragon Bone kitchen knife, God of Cooking set, God of Cooking overall rating. Beginner chef can use true energy to cook and process ingredients. Beginning to learn cutting and carving techniques. The path to becoming the god of cooking has begun. Work hard, young man. System level, 4 stars. Origin energy conversion ratio is at 50%. Host is allowed to capture ingredients. Bufong calmed his mind and observed the system panel that appeared in his mind. With the completion of the mission, the system level had also advanced to 4 stars. The origin energy conversion ratio had also reached 50%. This meant that his rate of advancement would increase by a lot. However, reaching 5th grade Battle King required 10,000 crystals of origin energy. The system's origin energy conversion ratio was at 50%. In that case, he would need to earn 20,000 crystals in order to advance 20,000. Bufong was expressionless. He did not know what to say. According to the current prices of these dishes, how long would it take for him to reach a sales volume of 20,000 crystals? Forget it. There was no point in thinking about this now. He might as well properly study the upgraded system. System, what does the so-called allowing the host to capture ingredients mean? When Bufong saw the last message, he was a little puzzled and could not help but ask the system. Before 4 stars, the host ingredients are all provided by the system. After 4 stars, the host can choose the ingredients he wants to capture. The system will set the price for the dishes the host uses the captured ingredients to cook, the system seriously and solemnly said. Bufong was stunned. Capturing ingredients? With a chef with a combat level of 5? The God of Cooking set, the Golden Dragon Bone kitchen knife, has a suppressive effect on most ingredients. I believe the host can do it. Work hard, young man, the system said. Bufong felt that this was a very serious question that he had to clarify. Therefore, he continued to ask the question in his mind. System, where do I go to capture ingredients? Around the Imperial City? The system will provide a teleportation function that can bring the host to the gathering place of ingredients in the wildlands. It sounded very impressive, but would it really be all right to send it to the food gathering place? Bufong always felt so unsafe. Just as Bufong was thinking about these questions, the true qi in his body suddenly boiled up, which made his eyes slightly lit up. He knew that this was the sign of a breakthrough. The main difference between a 3rd grade battle maniac and a 4th grade battle spirit was the formation of a true energy vortex within the Dantian. This true energy vortex was equivalent to the soul of true energy and controlled the flow of true energy. That was why it was called a battle spirit. At this moment, Bufong could feel a steady flow of hot air coming from his lower abdomen. The true energy in his body was rapidly converging toward that area and slowly forming a vortex. Bufong looked inside himself and could see that there was a true energy vortex that resembled a galaxy circulating within his lower abdomen. There was no expression on Bufong's face, but the hint of joy in his eyes could not be concealed. He stretched out his hand and waved it toward the air. With a thought, a stream of true energy burst forth from the true energy vortex. Compared to before, the Bufong who had become a battle spirit was much more proficient in controlling true energy. After controlling the true energy for a while, Bufong had already gotten used to the changes in his true energy. His joyful mood gradually calmed down, and he turned his attention toward the God of Cooking set. System, what about the Golden Dragon Bone kitchen knife? How do I retrieve it? Bufong asked. The system is sending it out right now. Please do not rush it, the system solemnly replied. Bufong was momentarily stunned and did not know what to say. However, soon after, a speck of light appeared in the air in front of him. The speck of light continuously shuttled back and forth and actually drew out a mysterious magic array in the air. A buzzing sound rang out, and something seemed to be slowly emerging from within the magic array. Roar! As Bufong stared at the magic array, a deafening dragon roar suddenly resounded, causing Bufong's mind to tremble and his eardrums to vibrate. From within the magic array, a pitch-black kitchen knife slowly floated out. Around the kitchen knife, there was actually a tiny golden dragon simulacrum that was roaring angrily. The dragon roar came from the mouth of the divine dragon simulacrum. An invisible pressure instantly enveloped the store. Bufong's body and mind sank as if he was facing an incomparably majestic mountain. He was almost unable to breathe. Outside the store, Blackie, who was lying at the entrance to take a nap, suddenly opened its doggy eyes and looked toward the store with a grave expression. It was extremely vigilant. However, as if it had thought of something, Blackie rolled its doggy eyes and went back to sleep. The golden divine dragon simulacrum dashed out and instantly bit Bufong's wrist. Bufong felt a slight pain as a drop of dark red blood flowed out from his wrist. It was enveloped by the divine dragon simulacrum and slowly flew toward the kitchen knife. In the end, Bufong's blood was devoured by the kitchen knife. The pressure from the majestic mountain also instantly dissipated, and the divine dragon simulacrum also disappeared. A simplified version of the divine dragon appeared on the wrist that was bitten. Bufong's mind seemed to have established a connection with the golden dragon bone kitchen knife. With just a thought, he would be able to make the kitchen knife enter the icon on his wrist. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife, God of Cooking set, has been delivered. Host, please accept it, the system lightly said. Bufong's eyes focused as he held the simple and unadorned golden dragon bone kitchen knife that was floating in the air. Suddenly, a feeling of harmony spread from the bottom of his heart. His fingers moved and his wrist flicked. Holding the kitchen knife, Bufong easily swung out an incomparably gorgeous knife flower. Holding the kitchen knife, the corners of Bufong's mouth slightly curled up and revealed a trace of a smile. As expected of the God of Cooking set, it was so easy to use. Originally, Bufong thought that the golden dragon bone kitchen knife would be an incomparably gaudy kitchen knife made from golden dragon bones. He did not expect that its true appearance was actually an unassuming black iron kitchen knife. Golden dragon bone kitchen knife, one of the accessories of the God of Cooking set. Forged from the dragon bones of a golden divine dragon, it possesses the might of a divine dragon. It has a suppressive effect on all spirit beasts and has a killing effect on all spirit beasts below the 7th grade. The host will consume half of his true energy to activate it and can transform into the shape of a kitchen knife. The kitchen knife has a spirit energy enhancement effect when processing ingredients and can prevent the loss of the ingredient's spirit energy the system introduced. It can even transform? Bufong was slightly surprised. After all, it was a God of Cooking set, and it was indeed extraordinary. He could not look at this kitchen knife like how he would look at an ordinary kitchen knife. Moreover, Bufong suddenly thought of the main reason why the system allowed him to go to the wildlands to capture ingredients was probably because he had obtained the God of Cooking set. With a golden dragon bone kitchen knife, he could kill spirit beasts below the 7th grade. Even if he was a weakling, he would still be invincible when facing spirit beasts below the 7th grade with this kitchen knife. System 4 stars. I just happened to gather 4 fragments of the God of Cooking set and exchange them for the golden dragon bone kitchen knife. Then, I am allowed to capture ingredients. All these arrangements are really coincidental. Bufong chuckled. Personally capturing ingredients was an essential cultivation for a chef. Only by doing so would he be able to have a deeper understanding of the ingredients. Only by doing so would he be able to invest more emotions into the ingredients and cook more delicious dishes. Bufong had always been clear that the system was only a support. It only opened the door to the path of the God of Cooking for him. If he wanted to truly become the God of Cooking at the top of the food chain in this fantasy world, Bufong still needed to work hard. Practicing his knife skills and practicing his carving skills were all for that goal. After calming himself down, Bufong regained his expressionless face. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand was spinning rapidly. Then, Bufong's eyes focused, and with a thought, the golden dragon bone kitchen knife turned into a wisp of green smoke and entered the mark on Bufong's wrist. Let me first try the new dish unlocked by the system, red braised meat. The red braised meat provided by the system should be extraordinary. Bufong softly muttered as he put away the golden dragon bone kitchen knife. Chapter 84. Bufong also did not expect that the dish to be unlocked this time would actually be red braised meat. He still remembered the red braised spirit pork he tasted in the Immortal Phoenix restaurant. Even though Bufong found many flaws in the dish, it was undeniable that the taste of the red braised meat was indeed pretty good. As a chef, it was impossible for Bufong to not have tasted red braised meat before. He was very familiar with the cooking method of red braised meat. However, he was not in a hurry to cook it. Perhaps the red braised meat mentioned by the system would have a different cooking method? Bufong called out the system's description of the red braised meat. Red braised meat cooking method. The cooking method of this red braised meat requires true energy cooking. It tests the host's control of true energy as well as the handling of the ingredients. The meat selected is the meat of the 5th grade spirit beast, the heavenly punishment deer from the wildlands. Its meat has a rich fragrance, but it is very easy to change its quality. Once the host makes a mistake, the venison meat will become unbearably bitter. The cooking method of the red braised meat provided by the system was indeed not the ordinary cooking method. It actually required true energy cooking. This slightly surprised Bufong. Could it be that all the dishes unlocked in the future would require true energy cooking? Furthermore, the ingredient chosen for this meat was venison instead of the traditional pork. This greatly exceeded Bufong's expectations. Bufong walked in front of the cupboard and pulled it open. Inside was an intact piece of slightly red venison. Perhaps it was because this venison existed in another world. Its skin fat was slightly thicker than that of the venison Bufong had seen before. It was somewhat similar to pork, but the degree of tautness of the two was definitely different. A strange fragrance was emitted from the venison. It was a strange fragrance that would not arouse one's appetite, but it could make one's nose twitch involuntarily to smell it. After taking out the venison and carefully placing it on the chopping board, Bufong thought of something, and the pitch-black dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. The kitchen knife spun in his hand for a while, and Bufong used it to scrape the surface of the venison to remove a layer of impurities. Then, he fetched some spring water and soaked the venison. Patting the venison with the back of the knife, Bufong expressionlessly raised the kitchen knife. There was only one important point in processing this Scorpio deer, and that was to be fast. Moreover, the incision had to be smooth so that the fragrance and spiritual energy in the deer meat could coexist peacefully. There would be no collision and the meat would become bitter. It was Bufong's first time using the dragon bone kitchen knife, but he didn't feel the slightest bit of awkwardness. He raised the knife and slashed it down at lightning speed. His meteor knife skill was close to perfection, so it wasn't difficult for him to do this. Da-da-da-da. The crisp sound of the golden dragon bone kitchen knife colliding with the chopping board resounded throughout the kitchen. Soon, the heavenly punishment deer's venison was completely cut into pieces. Every cut was extremely smooth, and the process was almost perfect. The boiling spring water was poured into the large plate with the venison, and the hot water completely covered the venison. Then, Bufong began to prepare other matters. This time, he didn't pour oil into the wok because the venison itself was greasy. If he poured oil into the wok, the different smell of the oil would affect the taste of the dish. Bufong kept the wok dry. When the temperature of the wok reached a degree where it was slightly scalding, he took out the venison that had been blanched with high-temperature spring water. He used his true energy to force the moisture out of each piece of venison before putting them into the wok. When the venison entered the wok, it made a sizzling sound. Waves of rich fragrance continuously emitted from the venison. Bufong wasn't fooled by the fragrance. He took out a piece of brown sugar prepared by the system, crushed it, and turned it into powder. Then, he turned his gaze to the wok. When the venison in the wok seeped out a glossy layer of fat, Bufong sprinkled the brown sugar into it. Then, he took a spatula and began to stir-fry. Bufong's stir-frying was very regular. This was the summary of his experience as a chef. When the brown sugar melted, it turned into a syrup that enveloped every piece of venison. At this moment, the originally white venison also became bright red. The fragrance of the meat had already uncontrollably spread out, enveloping the entire kitchen. After pouring some spring water into the wok, Bufong covered it with a lid. At this moment, he also became serious. The next step was the true energy cooking process. He operated the true energy vortex in his energy center, mobilizing it to surge out and pour into the wok, wrapping around every piece of venison. The broth in the wok was boiling, causing the venison to rumble and tremble. The venison's skin became as bright as jade, and it was constantly emitting the fragrance of the meat. When a lot of the broth in the wok had evaporated, Bufong retracted his true energy. He opened the lid of the wok and began to continuously stir-fry, causing the increasingly thicker broth to completely cover every piece of venison. After adding salt and a little soy sauce, the aroma of the meat finally stabilized. The aroma of the meat was accompanied by a thick fragrance, which was intertwined with a sweet aroma. Just by smelling this aroma, Bufong felt a little hungry and salivated. Taking out a blue and white porcelain plate, Bufong poured the red braised meat onto the plate. The new dish was also successfully completed. Even though he needed to use true energy to cook, compared to cooking the sage herb phoenix chicken soup last time, Bufong seemed to be more skillful and at ease this time. Perhaps it was because he had made a breakthrough. After carrying the red braised meat out of the kitchen and into the store, Bufong was immediately startled. That was because Blackie was already squatting on the dining table, blinking its doggy eyes as it stared at the red braised meat in Bufong's hands. Its tongue was constantly flicking in and out. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. This lazy dog could not wait to eat the moment it smelled the meat. However, the fragrance of the red braised meat was indeed very tempting, even better than the sweet and sour ribs. Taking out another plate, Bufong placed it in front of Blackie and began to scrutinize the red braised meat. Perhaps it would be more appropriate to call it red braised venison. It was red, shiny, and trembling. White steam rose from the top of the agate-like red braised meat. The venison skin was rosy, the next layer of fat was white, but not greasy, and the last layer of lean meat was crystal clear. It was too beautiful to behold. After picking up a piece for Blackie, Bufong also picked up a piece of red braised venison and put it into his mouth. The fragrance of this dish was very unique. Once the meat entered his mouth, the faint sweetness of the gravy blossomed in his mouth. Immediately after, he involuntarily bit down on the meat's skin. The fragrance of the meat exploded like a bomb and instantly covered his mouth and taste buds. With a sizzling sound, the entire piece of meat entered his stomach. However, the urge to eat another piece rose in his heart. Just like that, Bufong continuously ate half of the plate of venison and was still not satisfied. He simply could not stop. It was as if he had the urge to eat again every time he had not tasted the meat's flavor. Blackie was also gobbling down the meat on the porcelain plate. Its doggy eyes were slightly narrowed, and it was extremely satisfied. The human and dog quickly finished the entire plate of venison. Contentedly curled up on the chair, Bufong exhaled a breath of hot air. Blackie happily returned to the door and comfortably lay down to sleep. Sleeping after eating was indeed Blackie's style. After cooking with true energy, the taste of this venison is simply indescribably good. The fragrance of the heavenly punishment deer and the aroma of the meat have completely fused together, making the taste present an irresistible feeling. Bufong thought of the taste of the red braised meat, and he unconsciously stuck out his tongue to lick his lips. After resting for a while, Bufong placed the plate in the automatic dishwasher and leisurely walked toward his room. It was undeniable that sometimes sleeping after eating was also a kind of happiness. However, just as he walked to the door of his room, the system's voice rang out in his mind once again. Temporary mission. The host is required to prepare for the first capture of ingredients tomorrow. The transfer of ingredients will begin the day after tomorrow. Without experiencing wind and rain, how can you see the rainbow? Young man, use your kitchen knife to conquer all ingredients. Mission reward: rice noodle roll cooking technique. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.